worsens. But the finance ministry signaled that Beijing was done with matching tariffs. In a statement on its website, it said U.S. goods exported to China are no longer market viable, and said if the U.S. continues to increase tariffs on Chinese imports, China will not respond. The Commerce Ministry issued a statement at the same time with the same message about further tariffs, but it warned that if the U.S. persists in taking substantive actions that infringe upon China's interests, China will, quote, respond resolutely and stand firm to the end. John Ruich, NPR News, Beijing.
The White House envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived in Russia on an unannounced visit. The Kremlin says he'll meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. NPR's Charles Maines reports from Moscow.
According to flight tracker data, Witkoff's plane touched down in Russia's second city of St. Petersburg, where Putin is currently spending the day on a work trip. The meeting marks Witkoff's third sit-down with the Kremlin leader in the past 2 months. Witkoff's arrival comes as President Trump has expressed growing frustration with Moscow's lack of progress in talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. Trump has even threatened secondary tariffs and sanctions on Russian oil exports, a major pillar of the Russian economy, if he decides the Kremlin leader is dragging out negotiations to further his military aims. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
The Senate has confirmed President Trump's nominee to be the top U.S. military officer. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is Lieutenant General Dan Kane.
Kane is a retired F-16 pilot who was deputy commander of a task force in Iraq when then-President Trump met him in 2018. Trump has claimed that the general put on a Make America Great Again campaign hat during that visit. U.S. military officers are banned from engaging in political activity, and General Kane denied that story at his confirmation hearing. He promised to be apolitical as the nation's top military officer and said he would resign if asked to carry out illegal orders by the president. Unlike previous chairmen, Kane has never led a combatant command or military branch. He replaces General C.Q. Brown, who Trump fired 2 months ago. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has questioned if General Brown had been appointed simply because he is black. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
President Trump says he will receive a physical today at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Trump is 78 years old. Given his age and the focus on former President Joe Biden's health when he was in office, Trump's exam is likely to draw attention. On Wall Street, the Dow is down 180 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. National Institutes of Health has canceled research grants worth more than $110 million to Harvard University and its affiliated hospitals since late February. Crimson reports that according to filings by the Department of Health and Human Services, at least 23 grants affiliated with Harvard Pilgrim, Boston Children's, Cambridge Health Alliance, Beth Israel Deaconess, Mass General, Brigham and Women's, and the School of Public Health were all canceled over a month-long time span between February 28th and April 1st. The grants were terminated before the Trump administration announced a whopping $9 billion review of funding to Harvard and affiliated healthcare centers. The affected projects had more than $43 million in undispersed funds at the time of cancellation, and these grants are just the ones that were publicly disclosed on an HHS spreadsheet. The total number of terminations may even be higher. 3 Cape Cod National Seashore employees who were fired earlier this year as part of the Trump administration's effort to downsize the government have been reinstated, and the National Seashore says it's on track to hire 110 summer employees. That's according to the Cape Cod Chronicle. The 3 previously fired workers include an archaeologist, a park ranger, and a biologist, but they may not be back at work for long. Why? Well, because the Trump administration is working to overturn the Maryland judge's order that reinstated the employees. 44 degrees outside our studios. We are going to get wet this weekend. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts. Houston
Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Jim is at the Boston Public Library. I am at the studio in Brighton, but we are back on youtube.com/GBH News. You're going to hear some amazing live music in just about a half hour. And on Monday, retired federal Judge Nancy Gertner is going to be here on all the legal cases facing the Trump administration. On Tuesday at the Boston Public Library, we're going to be joined by the legendary filmmaker Ken Burns. Good morning, Jim.
I want to say two things. One, people are looking at your area here saying, where is she and why is she in Brighton? And we can't answer either of those questions. Let's move on. And I just want to underline what you said. We're going to talk about stress for the first 20 minutes of the show. If you need a stress reducer, you weren't here for the rehearsal of the Music Inclusion Ensemble. Gaelynn Lee's been with us. Lee's been with us before. Obviously, Adrian Anantawan and some other wonderful, wonderful players. And you're really in for some incredibly powerful music in about a half hour. So if you're not here, I'd come on down. In the interim, President Trump wants us Americans back working in the coal mines. RFK Jr. wants fluoride out of the water. Elon Musk wants us to fly to Mars in Cybertrucks. So it's totally unsurprising. The latest polling finds we are all stressed out of our minds. More people are worried about housing, the economy, parenting, education. Get this, more Americans are worried about losing their jobs now than they were during COVID when our offices were closed. So for the next, 30 minutes, Margie and I are here to help carry the weight of that stress. Phone and text lines are open at 877-301-8970. On a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? What has you especially on edge? And importantly, how are you dealing with the deluge? What's the thing bringing you relief, if there is such a thing? Is it showing up to events like last Saturday's march? Is it phoning a congressperson, checking in on family, yoga, turning off your mind and watching TV? And we know for Marjorie, obviously, it's some comment about shot putting. And if you don't understand that, listen to yesterday's show. 877-301-8970. I'm going to make a comment that you're going to ridicule me for. I am generally not a terribly stressed person. Oh, really?
You're not?
Jamie's laughing too.
Oh my God.
I am not.
You're not?
Okay, well, that was a big mistake on my part.
You are like 10 times worse than I am.
Well, I may be, but I'm 10 times worse than I usually am. Now. It is really every direction in which you look. And I don't want to say I've ridiculed people, but I have criticized people politely, I think, who call our show over the last few months and said, I just can't watch the news like I used to. It's just too stressful. I'm reaching that point myself, by the way. The news is not the news of the world anymore. It's Trump world. Essentially, you turn on cable news or a news show, and most of the 30 minutes or an hour is what is he destroyed? Who is he fired? What rights is he violating? And it is really stressful, not to mention the fact 73% of people in this country feel financially stressed, which is totally understandable based upon what's happened the last week or so, No,
I would say that we're a basket case nation at this particular moment, Jim.
I think that's
Everybody
true.
beside themselves. You know what? People always say you shouldn't do electronics when you're trying to go to sleep, but sometimes if I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I, in past weeks or months, would sometimes read on my phone because I have to read a lot in the news. I'd read the Globe, I'd read the New York Times, whatever, till I fell back asleep. Now, if I read them at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like vibrating across the bed like in a minor earthquake because every story is more upsetting than the next. So I can't do that anymore. I have to go back to reading books if I wake up in the middle of the night because the news is so distressing. Listen to people down in Woods Hole. They just lost their job, but they may be back, but they may not be back for a while. I think people in the federal government are absolute basket cases. Look what we just heard about Henry Santoro just told us about all these research grants at these hospitals. I don't understand how getting rid of anti-Semitism means you have to stop researching cancer and Alzheimer's.
Because it
and all
has
these
nothing to do with anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
That's why.
So you think to yourself, all these breakthroughs, and everybody knows people that have had some kind of illness, whether it's heart disease or arthritis, whatever it is. How do you think we get better drugs and better treatments for these illnesses? Through research at these hospitals. So it's kind of like, you feel like he's just out to kill us all. It's kind of how you feel. You know what I mean?
One lawmaker, I think, was trying to deal with the stress, and obviously he was stopped. This is a Globe headline right now, breaking news. Feds arrest Cape Cod lawmaker on charges he stole from his employer to pay campaign expenses for psychic services. And who wouldn't want psychic services to try to get him through really tough times? I can't believe they're persecuting this guy and prosecuting him, too.
I think before we get to the calls at 877-301-8970, to get us in the mood, we should play my favorite clip from any movie of all time, talking about how, when you're Lloyd Bridges and the plane is up in the air and you're trying to get it down because the pilot has got food poisoning and some Vietnam vet who can't fly the jet with 350 people aboard is trying to land the plane, and he's like down on the ground kind of an air traffic controller kind of guy. Okay, here's the off-quoted refrain from the 1980 comedy Airplane.
Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
And after he sniffs the glue, his hair stands up straight in his head.
Exactly
now, I'm not recommending anybody sniff glue or take amphetamines, but he's got a point there, Lloyd Bridges, right? This is the wrong time to try to quit all your bad habits.
Can I ask you a serious question? By the way, I love that sound too. You're a yoga person and have been for a long time.
Yes.
Does yoga help?
Oh, I think it does. I think it does.
Why?
I hate to think of what I'd be like if I didn't do it.
Why does it help, do you think?
Because you're so exhausted. I do the hot room, Baptiste yoga.
I know, hot yoga.
You're so hot and so exhausted. Yeah. You're just kind of lying flat on the floor at the end of it and just totally drained. So it does make you less stressed. But of course, then you get up and you get dressed and you go home and you are stressed
right
again.
Back.
I mean, they do talk about exercise. When people you used to be a long distance runner. People that run like 6 and 8 and 10 miles a day. Yeah. That's stress relieving. I'm sure a lot of other exercises stress relieving. But I think the fear about money and jobs and loss now is so real. And what used to be the conventional wisdom about like the stock market, for example, you were always safe in these bonds. Well, now people are saying, well, maybe you're not so safe in the bonds. So I don't understand the stock market. I'm not going to try to pretend I do, but the conventional wisdom is kind of turned on its head, and that is very upsetting to a lot of us.
Do you know that since you read that one story on bonds, you've talked about bonds every day for 3 days in a row? Do you know that?
There's more stories about bonds today, Jim, and let me tell you.
You are raring to go.
It's not encouraging.
Okay, so we're talking about stress in your life. Apparently, as I said, 3/4 of people feel they're financially stressed. People with young kids are particularly stressed about the future of their children. People who care about the climate, with Trump opening the coal mines the other day, are stressed about that. Did you see his thing about showers, his obsession?
Yeah.
Make the point. Can you make the point you made in our meeting yesterday morning?
There was a great piece, Jonathan Swan, a great reporter, Maggie Haberman in the New York Times, talking about how we are careening all over the place. And one of the things that they talked about is how President Trump seems to be caught in the 1980s, where things that were true, he's kind of like back with the Rat Pack, who were even earlier than that.
That was Frank Sinatra.
Dean Martin, and that was even the 60s. But the idea that clean coal is somehow clean, when everybody knows it's the worst polluter going, that things like wind farms, it's like he is stuck in a time warp. And when new information comes along that tells you that clean coal is no longer clean, he can't accept it. And what he does is surround himself with people that will pretend he's right, instead of, Abraham Lincoln, the famous, cabinet he had around him, the rivals and people that were...
Team of rivals was Doris Kearns Goodwin's book.
Team of rivals, people that would question his judgment. Trump doesn't want that. He wants yes men. And when you look at the people that are around him, you think, wow. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
It's kind of a sorry bunch.
Should we take some calls?
Sure.
Where do you want to go?
Sally in New Hampshire. Hi, Sally.
Welcome, Sally. Hi.
Hi, yes. What makes me anxious is the moral collapse of a large swath of the population in our country and our leaders. This is the thing that really just feels like the ground is moving beneath my feet. I wasn't raised this way. I was raised to believe the government would be good. The right thing would happen. I no longer feel that way. I feel like everything is a deal and a financial negotiation. It's very frightening.
Can I tell you something? I am both embarrassed and thrilled that you called. The immorality of this all that you raise is such an incredibly important point, and it is incredibly dispiriting and stressful. I was out with a bunch of friends last night at dinner, and we talked about the immorality not of the top guy, of Trump, but of all the members of Congress who don't have the courage to stand up to him, even though historically they've totally disagreed with his positions, and the American people that are willing, what are you laughing about, willing to embrace immorality. Sally, that was a great start. Thanks for your call.
I want to add something to what Sally had to say. I mean, I think we have had a lot of privately immoral presidents, right? I mean, we've had JFK was having a million affairs. Bill Clinton was carrying on. They were privately immoral, but they were publicly moral. And I think that's an important difference.
That's a wonderful
point.
point.
They may have been screwing around, I shouldn't use that word, in their private life, but they were genuinely trying to do, not all of them, obviously Richard Nixon wasn't, but, you know, Johnson was privately immoral, but publicly moral. And that's the problem. We're publicly immoral now. Okay, people.
No. Before you go ahead, I got to read some text here. Anonymous texters, there are a lot of people who don't care at all about the subject matter or concerned about Marjorie. The anonymous texter, let me read a few. Why is Jim in color, but Marjorie in black and white? Is this the Wizard of Oz? And that anonymous texter says, is Marjorie in the Witness Protection Program? And the key text is this one, another anonymous. Is Marjorie afraid to be near Jim? Blink twice, Marge, if you need to be safe.
This is not a big deal, okay? I'm a person, I have a redheaded complection.
I know that.
And
you're going to tell people. Okay, good.
And I have a lot of problems with not the bad skin cancers are going to kill you, but the spots all over your arms and your legs.
So you had a treatment.
And your face. And I got a thing to take the spots away.
Yeah, good.
And you're supposed to stay out of the sun. So that's
and there's too much light here is the point, is the bottom line. So it's good in any case. But do blink twice if you need help is the bottom line. 877-301-8970. What?
They also say it's going to make my pores smaller. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, that's good or bad?
That's good.
I like large pores myself.
Really? Okay.
Aaron, you're in the library, Aaron? Are you here?
Yes, I am.
Where the hell are you?
Outside.
Oh, you're outside?
I'm doing fine. I had to move away because otherwise we'd have feedback because of the delay.
Excellent. Excellent.
My wife is there. She can wave to you.
Hi, Aaron's wife, wherever you are here. Hi. Hello. What's up?
So here are the things that concern me most. I'm an attorney.
Yep.
So the threat to the rule of law firms caving, and the Supreme Court showing no real inclination to protect us is really an invitation for anarchy and for autocracy, because when there's nothing left to stop him, he'll do whatever he likes very happily.
Can I tell you, that's also something we should have said.
Concerns me.
That you are totally right. Total disregard for the rule of law. Aaron, you are now permitted to re-enter the library and rejoin your wife.
Thank you.
Thanks for an excellent call.
I'm sorry. I just want to say, in terms of the things that keep me going.
Yeah.
One is going to the demonstration.
Yeah.
And the second is making phone calls and postcards for elections. And the third is, frankly, if I may say, listening to you guys and calling in from time to time, because you're the only sane people on.
That is really kind. Thank you. That is really kind of you to say, Aaron. Thanks.
You know, you think about this. The Trump administration admitted early on, and the lawyer got reprimanded for doing it, that they sent the wrong guy to that horrible prison in El Salvador.
He was reprimanded. He was suspended from his job after 15 years working in the Justice Department.
So he's in what they call the worst possible hellhole prison ever. They've admitted he was sent there wrongly, and he's still there. I mean,
well, the Supreme Court sort of did a half measure last night, which we'll discuss with Sue O'Connell.
But that's not even the point. It's the wrong guy.
I agree.
Get him out. Don't you get him out if you've got a sense of morality or empathy or feeling for your...
Well, I'm going to say this at noon with Sue, but while it seems the Supreme Court's position is that they can't order Trump to bring him back because he's in the custody of another government, the president of El Salvador is another Trump lackey. And it's quite obvious that if Trump called him on the phone and said, please release, it's Mr. Garcia, right? Isn't it Garcia? Yes. He'd release him in a nanosecond. So it is grotesque. You were totally right. Judy in New Hampshire, welcome to the show. Hi.
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 Thank you for being you guys.
Thanks. Very nice. What's up?
We had a gathering at a neighbor's house last night. 30 of us.
Wow.
We had been reading a book called Tyranny.
By Timothy Snyder, right?
Right.
At Yale.
We broke into groups to talk about the book and to talk about the things that we might actually be able to do, like writing letters and calling our universities and not shopping on Amazon. And it just felt good to be with 30 people who are as concerned as you and Marjorie are. And I feel less stressful today just having done that.
Judy, that is another spectacular call. That's a great call. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. We really appreciate it. Yeah, getting together with other people, particularly when you feel fear. Judy didn't say that, but a lot of us feel fear about a lot of things. And one of the ways to do that is to get together with other like-minded souls.
Okay, here's somebody that said, Heather from Medford says she plays Fortnite with friends to unplug. I mean, I think a lot of people play video games to unplug, or they watch TV shows to unplug. I would watch that. Resistance, is it Resistance? What's the name of the show? The Sonda Rhimes show about the White House.
The Residence.
Residence, yeah. It's on Netflix. I only watched the first episode. I thought it was
I watched the second last night. It's unbelievably great.
Yeah, if you want to like zone out for the weekend, that might be a good way to go.
We have to take a break, Marjorie.
We have to take a break.
We do. I just said that, yes.
Yes, we're talking about whether people are, whether we're a country of collective basket cases at the moment, worried about your job, worried about your money, worried about the lack of a rule of law, worried about all the rules and guardrails seem to be coming down. And, it's swell. Our number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio.
Passover is coming right up, the holiday celebrating the biblical exodus of Jews out of Egypt. Singing Dayenu will happen in Jewish communities all over the world, and for Jews in Iran, Passover is a chance for kids to hit each other with scallions. What that's all about, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com.
%, live, 50% at the Boston Public Library, 50% in Brighton, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. What we're talking about is your stress level. And what's been really, calls have been great, and the texts have been great about what is causing you stress, and maybe more importantly, how you're dealing with that stress. Tyler in Narragansett has a much better attitude than you and I.
Yep.
He texts and says, when we all lose our jobs, we'll be fine. We can all work in the coal mines or screw in tiny screws into iPhones. By the way, I've been reading a lot, because I didn't know anything about it, about the notion of manufacturing iPhones here rather than in places like China.
Very expensive.
I have not found one credible economist, not one, who says that that it's doable in a finite period of time, multiple years, and two, that even if we were to bring factories to manufacture iPhones back here, that the cost of, as we said the other day, a cost of $1,000 phone would be anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 because of the good labor rules we have here, comparatively speaking, wages, et cetera, as compared to places like China.
Okay, I have a few more texts here.
Please.
One texter says that to beat the tariffs, I bought a year's supply of everything Lloyd Bridges picked the wrong week to quit. That would be cigarettes, booze, amphetamines, and sniffing glue. And then another Weisenheimer says, Marjorie is at the GBH studio because that's where all the glue is.
Let's go to Donna in Rhode Island. Welcome to the show, Donna. Thanks for calling.
Hi, I'm a long-time listener and first-time caller.
Thank you for that.
Actually, my friend and I were going to go up on the train today from Fall River to see you, but there were some people weren't feeling up to it. So
sorry.
we didn't make it.
Another time. I'd like to hear people taking the train
South
from Fall
Coast
River.
Rail, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I know, Marjorie. I know you're from Fall River. My parents are from there as well. What I'd like to add is what gives me peace and sort of settles me about all this news and bad press is I'm part of a very small part of a church group, and we're resettling an Afghan family in Warwick, Rhode Island, with the help of some sisters in Providence that coordinated. They're providing the home, and we're furnishing it with our ministry from our parish in Warren. And just the tasks of doing it, getting the items, knowing that we're doing some good for someone, and that we're still, able to help people in the country that still need help, even though they're not immigrating. There are people here that, have the need for permanent housing, et cetera.
That's great.
That is great, Donna.
That is totally great, Donna. Thank you.
And I'm glad Donna called, because a lot of people mention that to feel less crummy about what's going on, do things locally. I mean, that's a huge thing to resettle a family, but you can do things locally. Volunteer at your local food bank, or donate money to or goods to the local food bank. Those, think globally, act locally kind of stuff.
Well, Lyndia Downie is going to join us at 12:30, the leader of the Pine Street Inn for decades and decades, and talk about opportunities there to help people in need. They are immense. The number is 877-301-8970. Bernadette, you are in a truck, I'm told. Welcome to the show. Hi.
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 Thanks for taking my call. So I'm not as good a person as the woman who just called in from the New Bedford or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I'm drinking a lot of bourbon. I'm calling the White House on the regular and saying, asking for President Musk, and it's really fun. And then I'm
wait, don't go further. When you get the White House on the phone, if you do, a human, and you ask for President Musk, what do they say?
Oh, they get really mad. They're very quiet, and then their voice gets really tight, and they're like, "Ma'am." So I know I'm not the only one
That's great.
doing that.
That's good. Keep going.
And then I ask for President Trump, and then I leave, very unkind but true statements on their recording device, and hopefully I won't be arrested. And then I'm also very serious about what I'm going to do. Like, I've gamed out how I'm going to deal with ICE, because I'm in the landscaping business, and so I'm aware that that's a target for them.
Yes.
And then I'm also going to the shooting range, and I'm getting to be an even better shot because I'm ready to defend this country.
Wow.
Wow, Bernadette, that's impressive.
That is impressive. Thank you,
for
Bernadette.
the call.
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
call. Here's a texter, Gordon from North Andover. Stress. Oh my God, where do you start? I listened to a Kentucky farmer crying about the tariffs, putting him out of business, and the pain he still has from the last set of tariffs. When asked about President Trump, the farmer says, "Oh, he's looking after us, and he has a backbone."
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up. There was a story in the paper this morning, and I don't know if it was the Globe, the Times, or the Washington Post, that was really painful about farmers in regions of the country who overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump, what's the new tariff level in China?
124% or something.
Is that the Chinese tariff? Saying that I think it's soybean farmers in particular, who sell a huge percentage of their crop to China, and saying that obviously China's not going to buy them for that inflated price. And all of them were saying it wouldn't just make their lives tougher, but put them out of business. And again, these are the people who put their faith in the ability of Donald Trump to fix what ails us, which apparently he does not have either the inclination or the skills, I would argue, to do. Stephanie on the road, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Back in 2016, I started using Sirius, and I couldn't listen to the news at all. But I had faith in our democracy and the things that would keep him in line. And so I figured, I don't need to hear any of this stuff. I did listen to the comics at night, so I got some. But now I feel like I have to watch and listen, because I feel like there's a tiger ready to snatch me, and I've got to be on guard, because there are no people who are curbing him. I mean, he is doing so much damage that I don't know if we will ever be able to recover. It's like Biden spent 4 years recovering everything from the 4 years of Trump, the first term. I don't know if we're going to survive this. it really is frightening. And I wake up at 4 o'clock every morning, and I end up reading and watching the news. And I finally fall asleep around 6 for a couple of hours. But everybody who's called in so far, they've had great ideas, except the gun thing. I just don't really believe in that one. But I'm going to start calling the White House and ask for President Musk. And it's just, I'm sorry, it's effing insane. I know you're not allowed to swear on this.
No, well, you're allowed to say that.
I don't have 30 people, I have a lot of, believe it or not, there are 30+% in Massachusetts voted for Trump. And so you have to be very careful. I mean, I'm ready to go back to church just to maybe I can find 30 people.
Well, can I say, Stephanie, can I interrupt you?
A lot of people who don't.
To say, we've talked about this before. One of the most important books, I think, of our lifetimes was written by Bob Putnam from Harvard, Robert Putnam, called Bowling Alone. And this is long before Trump, but it was about sort of the disintegration of relationships because we were literally and figuratively bowling alone as opposed to being in bowling leagues, church groups, union halls, that sort of thing. And so I know it's not easy to make connections, particularly now in the era of social media and an era of fear, but I really think that's the best advice that we've heard from anybody, not just in the last 20 minutes, about being with other people who care deeply about what you care about, you know?
Right, that's the problem. And that is they're not always on the same page as you. I guess I'm one of those lefty liberals nutcases or something, elitist, all
Can I interrupt you again? You don't need to be, as you described yourself, a lefty liberal elitist to be troubled by the assault on democracy and everything else. Marjorie says this all the time. What used to be seen as radical agendas in these eras are totally mainstream kinds of things. So don't isolate yourself like you sound like you're doing. Stephanie, though, excellent call. Thank you for making it. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that's an important point because the stuff, well, the climate, help for the climate, help for childcare, help on more fair taxes for the middle class, all those things that you would hear the GOP call radical ideas, childcare, they're what polls show most Americans want. Timothy Snyder, by the way, the guy that wrote the Tyranny book, the guy from Yale, one of our texters is reminding us, we discussed this the other day, Jim, that he has fled to Canada.
Yeah.
This is the most discouraging news that I've heard this week. That's what the texter says.
Well, we actually said it on the air. Who else was you talking about? There was another Yale professor who had written a piece.
Yeah, he's going to Canada too.
He was going to Canada.
We talked about that with Jeffrey Sonnenfeld, I think,
that's
the
what it was,
other guy that's from Yale. He's not going to Canada. But one of his colleagues said he was going to Canada, and he said because he's afraid of the crackdowns on universities, and he wants to live in a country where he can be free to speak his mind. And that was really a depressing thing, but that's what he said, because as we now know, these students are losing their visas, are not necessarily students that have anything to do with Hamas or any sympathies for Hamas, and sometimes are not even pro-Palestinian people. They're people that may have had driving traffic infractions.
Well, they won't even say what they are. Can I make a suggestion, even though we're a little early? I really need music. So why don't we break now so we can hear some music, okay?
I'm ready to go.
Let's do it.
Okay, bye.
No, not bye. What's coming up, Marjorie?
Oh, what's coming up? Oops.
Exactly, thank you.
I was on the phone with you, Jen.
That's how the show works.
Yeah, we are going to have, for Live Music Friday this week, we're going to have courtesy of the Music Inclusion Ensemble ahead of a big show tomorrow night at the Berklee Performance Center. We are going to hear
Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, the newly announced director of the Museum of Fine Arts joins us to talk about his vision for the MFA. Plus, a Minecraft movie is a goldmine, smashing box office expectations and unleashing out-of-control audiences. Then the Minecraft game soundtrack is among the 25 new additions to the National Recording Registry. We take on that and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and oil changes. Direct Tire and Auto Service, not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com. And Dover Rug and Home, rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug, rugs and the people who know them.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. I'm at the library. Marjorie is somewhere. I don't know. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's time for a little stress reduction, as we said. Live Music Friday ahead of a show tomorrow night that's been 2 years in the making. It features Gaelynn Lea, Adrian Anantawan, and the Music Inclusion Ensemble. It's free. Go to Berklee, BERKLEE.edu for more information. In case you're unfamiliar, they've been with us before. The Music Inclusion Ensemble is a group of highly talented, differently abled musicians, all led by the incredible violinist, Berklee professor Adrian Anantawan. Adrian, it's great to have you here. And back to support them is Duluth, Minnesota's finest, Gaelynn Lea. You remember her as the winner of the 2016 NPR Tiny Desk concert. She's performed with bands like Wilco and the Decemberists and co-founded the disabled artist advocacy group Ramped, which we'll also talk about. And she's performed on Live Music Friday a number of times. In a couple of minutes, we'll speak to Gaelynn, Adrian, as well as a rising star, Georgia-born violinist and composer Connor Valcy. But first, let's hear a piece composed by Connor. It's called, I hope I get this right, Salto Tras Salto. Welcome to you all. Music Inclusion Ensemble. Adrian, Connor, want to join us over here? That was incredible, incredible music. You're going to hear more from them in a couple of minutes. Want to tell people how to learn more about tomorrow night's concert, Marjorie?
Absolutely. There's going to be a concert tomorrow at 7 p.m., the Berklee Performance Center. It is free to attend. For information, you go to berklee.edu. And Berklee, by the way, has got 2 E's at the end, Berklee, berklee.edu. It's tomorrow night, 7, Berklee Performance Center.
And hello to Gaelynn. Hello, Gaelynn, who's getting her position here. Connor, that was absolutely stunningly beautiful. And Adrian, it's great to see you as always.
Adrian, tell us the rest of your players. Introduce everybody, please.
Sure. Thank you for having us here. To my right is our lovely violist Connor, who's arranged a lot of our music for our show. I'm just going to go down the row here. Sriram, Tara, Capono, Adam, Jocelyn, Kira, and Zainab. And of course, we have Gaelynn Lea here too. So thank you for having us.
Unbelievable. Just great. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, I hope people listen enough that they know, because you've been here a bunch of times, Adrian, staying with you. Music Inclusion Ensemble. What is it and what was its genesis?
Music Inclusion Ensemble is a group that is housed at Berklee College, where I teach. And all the members in our group have some form of disability or are allied in some respects to the disability identity. We work together within a course that I teach, but also we do a lot of performances around the city and hopefully eventually outside of the city on tour.
You know, Adrian, we asked you this before when you were with us, but tell people again how you worked out playing the violin. I know you hold the bow with via prosthetic, but you've got a whole rigmarole set up. Explain to people.
Yeah, so I was born without my right hand. Our music teacher wanted me to play the recorder, and I just didn't have enough hands to do that. So I chose the violin because it was just the most beautiful instrument I knew, and I was able to create this cast called the spatula that allows me to hold the bow, and it's been almost 3 decades, and here we are on the other side, playing music.
Hey, Gaelynn, nice to see you again.
Hi.
Hi, and Gaelynn's going to sing in a few minutes, and you're going to, I mean, just incredible. Gaelynn, I asked Adrian to tell us about the Music Inclusion Ensemble. You've talked to us a lot about RAMP, the organization you put together. Explain to people what it is, and explain whether or not progress is being made in the years since you put this thing together.
Yeah, RAMP is, it stands for Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities. It's kind of it's a professional organization, so there's a lot of programming out there for people just to play recreationally or to, learn an instrument, but then once they're out in the field, it's not a very accessible industry in many ways, and there's not a lot of support. So we designed the group in order to, first of all, create like a database where you could go and actually find hundreds of disabled artists all in one place if you're looking to expand who you bring into your venues, for example, right? And then we also do awareness building and, in the industry, like with the Recording Academy, we do a lot of work to help make the Grammys more accessible, for example. And in terms of progress, I think the biggest thing is that our numbers are growing. We keep having new members every month. We're admitting more professionals, and the goal is to eventually make it so obvious that there are disabled artists out there that it needs to be prioritized, making the industry accessible and getting people representation that they deserve and that are part of culture.
But I'm sorry,
I wondered whether there was even such a thing 20 or 30 years ago, if there was an opportunity for disabled musicians. Was there?
I mean, there've always been disabled musicians ever since there were musicians, right? But having support and being represented and being able to be open about it, like Adrian and I were talking the other day, about 25% of people, I don't know the exact number, Adrian, you'll have to correct me, but a lot of people hide their disabilities in the music settings because they're afraid they won't get gigs or that they won't be able to play at the venue. And so we don't really know. We want people to be able to be loud and proud about it. 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, you know? They wouldn't have been able to talk about it, likely, and still feel like they'd be taken seriously. So we're working to change that.
So, Connor, you composed the first piece, which was stunning, I should say.
Yeah.
And my understanding is you arranged a second piece we're going to play that Gaelynn composed a few minutes ago. Tell us a little bit about the piece we just heard.
So with the piece that you guys just heard, it's called Salto tras salto. It's Spanish for leap after leap.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I really wanted to get in forward to was especially a bossa nova. It just helps a lot of people move. And
even me, by the way, who doesn't move, by the way, I should say. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Because a lot of people, we need like that specific challenge to take that leap and that leap again. Something that Gaelynn does every day, something that Adrian does every day. So it really represents us as not just individuals, but as a community.
You know, when I was reading about you and your upbringing, I read a story about a doctor told your family when you were a little kid, Connor won't even be able to speak. Well, we know the end game here. Was it music? What was the thing that was the turning point in your young life there?
So, yeah, it was music. I was really, really lucky. So one of the things that my parents did, especially my father, they took me through a lot of therapy. And especially, there was like one specific therapist that really helped me musically. She would actually create songs to help me communicate with the outside world. And a lot of it I really have to thank my parents for, because they put a lot of faith into not only the therapists, but the teachers that really helped me go through.
You know, I wondered kind of too if you can explain, because you've got a lot of musicians today performing at the library. What arranging means? The coordination among the players and coming in and coming out. Explain it.
That's a fantastic question. Like in our daily lives, there is a specific time and place for everything, especially like right now, what we're doing at that moment. And it's the same thing when you're arranging specific musicians all day long. Like you look at Stevie Wonder, what he does with his compositions. Every specific place has a specific time.
Yeah.
With the melody and with the chords and with the instrumentalists as well.
Yeah, they all and you can play one song 20 different ways.
Right.
It's amazing how much arrangers can matter. Really successful ones make a huge difference, like you.
So, Gaelynn, were you nervous? Are you nervous when you write something and you entrust it to somebody who's going to do an arrangement of something that's yours?
Not if it's Connor. I mean, I had heard Connor's arrangements, and I thought they were gorgeous. And when Adrian and I started talking about maybe having some new music arranged for the next time I visited Boston, I was like, do you think Connor would do it? And I didn't want to like pressure him or give him too much, but he did 6 songs, which is amazing, and they're really, really cool arrangements. We'll be playing them all tomorrow night at Berklee, so I hope people can come and listen. He did a really beautiful job.
Yeah, what is tomorrow night going to look like, Adrian? Can you give us an overview of the concert?
Yeah, so we'll be playing tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Berklee Performance Center. It is a free concert. You just need to go online to get tickets. And we're playing...
Berklee.edu,
yes,
correct? Berklee.edu, okay.
And we're playing a range of music from classical to some contemporary pop. We have a few that are really going to get people dancing in their seats. And then a lot of Gaelynn's pieces, which are more folk-based, but just all an incredible celebration of diversity and disability identity.
Can I just say, Zelda just, she's watching on YouTube. She just posted, this group has brought smiles to my face for the first time in weeks. And I think Zelda is not alone. Thanks for writing that, Zelda. I'm sorry, Margaret.
And Adrian, I read where you have been working on this in preparation for this concert for 2 years, and the group has expanded several times during that period.
Yeah, so I remember our founding members in a very small room at Berklee. We were just a motley group of 5. And then now we've expanded to almost 20 musicians for this concert in collaboration with an incredible chorus called the Cambridge Common Voices, which is a chorus that has musicians and singers with neurodivergence and just differences.
Gaelynn, can you tell us a little bit more about, I've been reading, every time you're here, there's a new project or 10. I think there's a book in the works. I think you did the Macbeth score. We talked about that with Daniel Craig, and now you're doing something with that. What's up? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, for me, I finished writing my memoir, and I'm in the second round of edits. It should be coming out this time next year, basically. And so I'm very excited to get that kind of wrapped up. It was a big project, but it includes a lot of things about disability culture and being a musician on the road and what that is like. And then the Macbeth soundtrack that I made and put in the play in New York, I'm actually going to get to release like my dream version soundtrack, like what I was envisioning when I wrote it all, and it didn't get changed by staging and stuff. So that is going to come out next month. It'll be called Music from Macbeth, and it'll be out in May.
Fabulous. Music from Macbeth out in May.
And when we're talking about musicians with disabilities, you mentioned that there, I don't know if it was Adrian or Gaelynn mentioned, a lot of the musicians hide their disabilities. But what kind of disabilities are we talking about? What is the range of issues that you've seen people overcome to play their music?
Well, for example, I do a lot of talks about making music more accessible in the and being out about what you need. And I remember after one of my talks, a few weeks later, I received an email, and there's a lady with chronic illness who's been a part of a choir for 20 years. She said that talk finally gave her the courage to tell the choir director that she really needed a stool to sit on so that she could be comfortable. And it had been like so many years where she had kept that to herself and just kind of bared the pain throughout every concert for no real reason. I mean, it's not that big of a deal to get a stool, right? So things like that, and then it goes all the way from if you're neurodivergent or you have low vision or, maybe you have certain dietary needs or you just need a quiet space before. There's so many reasons. And then for people like me, I need accessible stages and green rooms. And so there's a wide range of issues, and I think that's why people, sometimes don't know where to start. And the real point is just ask the artist.
Yeah.
Ask every artist, because you might not know by looking at someone. Selma Blair has MS, right? And she, for a while, you wouldn't have known necessarily. So it's important to just ask every artist and assume you don't know the whole story, just to make it a welcoming space for everyone.
So can I ask Connor and Adrian to gently put down your headsets and rejoin your fellows while Gaelynn tells us about the piece you're all about to perform. What's The Long Way Around, Gaelynn?
The Long Way Around is a song about friendship that goes through a storm and comes out the other side stronger. And this one, I'm really grateful that Connor arranged. I usually play it with a looping pedal, and the orchestra's gonna be my looping pedal, basically. It's a fun tune, so here we go. In a moment.
Music Inclusion Ensemble, playing The Long Way Around, and as Gaelynn said, composed by Gaelynn, arranged by Connor. Here they are yet again. Welcome back.
was a gorgeous performance. We have been speaking with Gaelynn Lea, Adrian Anantawan.
Listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. Great Performances explores Chopin's musical evolution, from his Polish roots to his journeys in Paris. Watch Now Hear This, Chopin's Polish Heart, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. NBC Boston's Media Maven, our favorite local woman, Sue O'Connell, joins with the latest from jury selection of the Karen Reed trial, plus the Supreme Court's sort of rebuke of Trump and his deportation of a Maryland man to El Salvador.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Lyndia Downie, the Pine Street Inn, joins us to celebrate the opening of a new affordable housing center aptly named the Lyndia. She'll also talk about Beacon Hill's latest efforts to boost the shelter system and combat homelessness as federal.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. It is now a 3-digit standoff in the U.S.-China trade war, Beijing slapping a 125% tariff on American goods after Washington pushed up its levies on Chinese imports to 145%. Senator Todd Young is among 7 Republicans in the chamber who endorsed a bill to reclaim Congress's authority over tariffs as President Trump's policies fuel dramatic highs and lows in global markets. On NPR, he specifically addressed U.S. drug companies that depend on China for many of the active ingredients in their medications.
They are able to threaten to withhold these inputs into our manufacturing economy. That undermines our health security, and it could conceivably undermine our national security if we were in a time of conflict. So I know that's why President Trump is determined to reorder our trade relations with China so that we can become more resilient and avoid these things in the future.
Now, the ordering systems for 2 U.S.-made models of Tesla cars have been suspended in China. More on this from NPR's Emily Feng.
Tesla did not say why orders for its Model S and Model X cars were suspended on its website in China. The 2 models are Tesla's least popular and are made in the U.S. and imported to China, where Tesla has invested billions of dollars into 2 large factories near Shanghai to build electric vehicles and batteries. The cars Tesla makes in China make up a majority of its sales. Tesla CEO Elon Musk is a close ally of President Trump, but despite Musk's big bet on China, Trump has targeted China in an escalating trade war, and China responded by putting a blanket 125% levy on American goods. Musk lashed out at Trump's trade advisor Peter Navarro this week, calling him a, quote, moron and dumber than a sack of bricks on social media. Emily Feng, NPR News.
Democratic members of 2 independent agencies protecting workers' rights have once again been removed from their seats. This time it's due to an order from Chief Justice John Roberts. Here's NPR's Andrea Hsu.
The 2 members are Gwen Wilcox of the National Labor Relations Board and Kathy Harris of the Merit Systems Protection Board. President Trump fired both in the first few weeks of his administration. Wilcox and Harris sued, citing federal law and Supreme Court precedent that hold that they can only be fired for cause. Ever since, it's been a yo-yo of a legal battle. Twice already, judges have ordered them returned to their seats. But now, Chief Justice Roberts has temporarily halted those orders, while the Supreme Court considers the Trump administration's formal request for a review of the lower court decisions. Without the 2 members, both boards lack a quorum, hampering some of their core functions. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. From the GBH Radio Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A state rep from Cape Cod facing allegations that he stole tens of thousands of dollars from his former employer and spent the money on political and personal expenses. Representative Chris Flanagan is due in Boston Federal Court this afternoon. We have more from GBH's Katie Lannon.
U.S. Attorney Leah Foley claims that Flanagan, a Democrat from Dennis, spent some of the money on campaign materials like a mailer and T-shirts and lied to cover up the scheme. Flanagan was indicted on 5 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of falsifying records. Last year, state campaign finance officials ordered him to pay penalties in connection with the mailer. Flanagan is facing calls to resign from some on Beacon Hill, including Governor Maura Healey. Katie Lannon, GBH News 89.7.
A lawyer for Flanagan did not immediately respond to request for comment. Nantucket's commercial scalloping season comes to an end today, and it was a good one. So says some of the fishermen on the island. All told, more than 10,000 bushels of the prized shellfish were hauled in for the first time since the 2017-2018 season. The Current reports that the season was highlighted by an abundance of scallops in the harbors that led state and local officials to grant requests to both raising the per-day bushel limit for fishermen and then extending the season from the end of March to today. It was a good season. Red Sox open a series with the White Sox in Chicago tonight. 7:40 start. Bruins host the Hornets at the Garden. The Masters continues at Augusta National. 42 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru. In partnership with the Arbor Day Foundation, Subaru is distributing over 100,000 trees this year to grow greener, healthier communities for generations to come. Subaru, more than a car company.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Jim is broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. I am back in the Brighton studio, but we are back on youtube.com/GBH News today. A couple of programming notes. Retired federal Judge Nancy Gertner is going to join us on Monday to talk about the legal issues that are swirling around the Trump administration. Corby Kummer, our food man. Khalil Gibran Muhammad, who is an African-American studies scholar who left Harvard. Well, I guess he's still at Harvard part-time.
Part-time.
He's down at Princeton, too. Princeton, which has stood up to the threats from Donald Trump, at least so far. And on Tuesday at the Boston Public Library, we're going to be joined by the legendary filmmaker and documentarian Ken Burns on April 25th. Another edition of Ask the Governor with Maura Healey. Hello again, Jim.
And let me remind, Ken Burns on Tuesday is not Zooming in. He'll be here live, and he's quite an impressive person, in addition to being a classic filmmaker. In any case, we're joined now by another fairly impressive person. The desk, our favorite local woman, media maven Sue O'Connell. Sue is co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, commentator and news influencer.
Oh, yes, news influencer.
At NBC Boston. Even she forgot. You can see her in the docuseries A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Reed, streaming on Max and Discovery. Good day, Sue.
Good day to you. Good day to you, Marjorie.
Hello, Sue O'Connell. Great to see you. So you are our gal on the spot at the Karen Reed trial, which is drawing an intense amount of scrutiny and interest. What's going on? They've got most of the jury or close to most of the jury, or what's happening?
Yes, they have enough, I think, to seat the jury, but they want more, obviously, because we started the last trial with, I think, 19, and then when jury selection closed, then we started the trial with 17, and we ended the trial with 14. So it is expected, due to all of the reasons we have heard about, plus the length of this trial, that they're going to need more. So I think they have 16 seated jurors right now, 8 men, 8 women, and jury selection resumes on Monday. The goal is 18, I think, but they will take as many as they can get. So they'll go through the entire day. If they end up with 20, they'll end up with 20.
Can you explain, because I wasn't clear, I know that as they were adding people to the jury to get to the 12 plus 4 alternates, and then maybe, as you say, some extras, 3 people who had been seated dropped out?
Yes.
What happened in between?
We don't know. So what happens is usually sometimes they get accepted on a provisional, like I'm going to try and get out of work, or I'm going to try and get coverage for my kids or whatever, or I'm taking care of an elderly person, this is just speculation on my part, there's a lot of investigation into everyone's social media. and every juror who has been selected, there's now people on the defense and prosecution team looking into them. So, you never know. There might have been somebody who posted an opinion that was very strong that would be enough to suggest that perhaps they shouldn't be on
One
the
more
jury.
update, if we can. We've discussed...
Well, I have another one.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just do the one about... We know that members of the jury have made it clear to prosecutors and the defense in the first trial that on 2 of the counts, including the most serious one, second-degree murder, and also leaving the scene of a crime, I think, that they had reached unanimity. They had acquitted her 12-0. They hadn't reached agreement on the manslaughter charge. Do I have that right? And Reed's lawyers asked the Supreme Court to stay jury selection, to stay the trial, halt the trial, until that issue is resolved. My understanding is they're not holding the trial, but they also haven't ruled on the merits of the question.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. My understanding is also that the jurors have not been sworn in yet, so therefore the double jeopardy wouldn't trigger if indeed the Supreme Court decides that the murder charge and the leaving the scene charge should be dropped. What I'm told is the Supreme Court is reviewing the case. I shouldn't say considering. And they just felt that the pause wasn't necessary. So I imagine it feels like they will move somewhat quickly to say either we are going to take the case or we're not going to take the case.
And the double jeopardy thing, just so I should have explained this so people understand, is Reed's contention is since I was already acquitted, even though not formally, of these two charges, trying me again is a violation against the constitutional guarantee of no double jeopardy.
Right, and you would think in a normal world with a normal case, the district attorney would say, okay, there's no need to keep that charge of murder if indeed there was a unanimous agreement between jurors who then were split on manslaughter. Why would we go back at the murder charge again? But I think because this case has had such high publicity that they're going to.
You know what's I don't understand in this case. If half the jury or the jury was split on the manslaughter charge, manslaughter obviously is a crime, right? You kill somebody. How can they find her not guilty of leaving the scene of said crime?
Yeah, so
that doesn't make sense.
Ronnie Estanislao, who was one of the jurors who was on Canton Confidential on NBC 10 on Friday and also was featured in the Boston Globe recently, and a few of the other jurors who have not been on the record about it, said that they felt she may not have known she hit him. So therefore, if she didn't know she hit him, but did hit him, she couldn't have known she left the scene. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how that parses out.
Shouldn't that have been involuntary manslaughter then?
Well, again, the charges don't necessarily all align. Like if it's manslaughter and murder at the same time, you can find her guilty on both. It's again, our court system. As I keep talking to people on all sides of this issue who haven't paid a lot of attention to our court system, which I think was designed in 1640 and is using the same mimeographed verdict slips that the Pilgrims used and Governor Bradford used. There's a lot about our system that doesn't make a lot of sense.
One last thing from me, and then Marjorie I know Marjorie has one more thing she wants to talk about in terms of the trial. We've spoken to you about this double jeopardy thing a bunch of times, and I have to say, I've been pretty neutral. I hate the word. Well, neutral, sort of. I understand. But I have to say, the more I think about it, I read a piece in the Globe about one of the jurors from the first trial. What's the guy's name?
Ronnie.
The guy you just met. Okay. That they were debating in the jury room whether or not they should ask the judge if they could report separate outcomes, meaning we're conflicted still on manslaughter, but we are unanimous. And they ultimately decided, no, we're not going to ask the judge. The more I think about it, there is something wrong. And I'm going to take a position on her guilt or innocence because I just don't know enough to know. But there is something wrong when a jury internally votes unanimously to acquit you and you got to be on trial. I'm not arguing Constitution. I'm just arguing basic right and wrong. Is something wrong with this picture?
It's horrendously wrong. I mean, first of all, you think about this. This is a trial of a murder of a Boston police officer who was left to die or died on a front lawn in a blizzard, okay? And someone is charged with this. I don't have an opinion on her guilt or innocence either, but, this is decimating families, both families on both sides, and if you're on trial for your life and you didn't do it, and you find out the jurors actually agreed that you didn't do it, but there was no mechanism for them.
Or that you're not guilty.
Not guilty, right. The mechanism wasn't there to tell the judge. And also, are we not training our jurors? I mean, these are just regular people like, everybody out there. And we don't tell our jurors what they can and cannot do about asking questions of the judge.
Well,
this is a murder case.
I haven't been in a courtroom as a lawyer for decades and decades, and so maybe this is naive. How does a judge not say to a jury, any question you have about procedural things, feel free to ask me?
I think they probably, I served on a jury once.
So did I.
And I felt, it was 20 years ago, but I did feel that the court officer who was in charge of us kept saying, if you have questions, just let me know. So again, we'll, I think, learn more about the dynamics in the jury room. But again, it seems like a pretty clear answer, and a question wasn't asked, no one asked it, and that's why we're here today.
Including the defense, by the way, we should make clear. Okay.
They have the right to do that. Right.
So Beth Teitel, yet again, writes an absolutely brilliant column about this trial, as you know, has caused, there's crowds outside the courtroom every day. Some people are on the Karen side, some people are on the dead cop side. I would hope everybody be in the dead police officer side since he lost his life. But in any case, there's a divide there. And in this piece, Beth Teitel talks about how former fans of Reed who thought she was not guilty now think she's guilty, but they're afraid to say so on the Facebook page that got together about this because they're afraid people are going to come after them with threats and attacks. I mean, this person says, I will never post online that I think she's guilty. They will screenshot me, put you on blast for others to dig into your life and attack you. Another woman says, the mob is already coming after me for changing her mind.
Yep.
I mean, this is getting a little wild.
Well, no, it is wild. And I'll say, just to try and be as even-handed and fair as I can, there are, on all sides, there are people taking aggressive stances online, digging into people's lives and putting them on blast for things that they did or didn't do or accusations that they've made. I think a number of people that Beth spoke to actually didn't change sides so much in terms of what they learned or didn't learn about Karen, but because of interscene Civil War issues within the Free Karen Reed movement, which isn't directly connected to Karen, but is necessarily, people are upset they didn't get invited to a fundraiser, or are mad that they didn't get featured in something, or are mad at Turtle Boy for something he did or didn't do. So there's that part of it. But I am contacted at least, I think, 3 or 4 times a week through DMs on social media, through my work email, from people expressing to me that they're not 100% on one side or the other, but there's no space for them to talk about it.
Can I let me make an observation that is un-Karen Reed trial related that I've made before, and the example I've used before. Do you remember the situation? There was about 6 months or a year ago. This is what did it for me. There's a restaurant in the North End, the name of which I can't remember, that got in a dispute with a customer who'd made a reservation from New York.
Yeah.
He canceled, said he was in the hospital. That was dubious. Who knows?
Yep.
On the website of the restaurant, it says you got to pay, I don't know, $100 cancellation fee.
It's a shared table situation.
Yeah. And he didn't pay it. And there's a dispute, and the Globe and everybody else covered it. That's not the issue. The issue is, to me, both the restaurant owner and the guy who made the reservation said to reporters they'd both gotten death threats.
Yep.
That's how you respond in America in the age of you-know-who, whether it's the Karen Reed trial, it's a restaurant dispute in the North End. That's the language of disagreement, is you threaten to get somebody or kill them.
I agree with you 100%. And it's absolutely, people who send these death threats, 99.9% of them are sitting on their couch, eating potato chips, watching a baseball game, and they think it's funny. The only time in the past 10 years that I've had to have security is due to this Karen Reed case. When I said maybe some of the energy you spend out protesting would be better used writing letters and trying to, get someone to run against the district attorney so that you can make real institutional change rather than just standing outside. And I actually got death threats that I had to have NBC security with me. So, and of course I don't take 99.9% of them seriously, but at the same time, it's a vile middle school, and I mean no insult to middle schoolers, but it's a lunchroom in the middle school, and it's I think part of it, besides Donald Trump adding to this environment of you're with me or against me, and saying and calling people terrible names, I think the pandemic also had something to do with it, where people really just went inside, made these communities online, which oftentimes are very helpful. We all have support groups or groups that we're in that are or friend groups that we're in online. And then there's this other part of it where especially the anonymous people just really love getting people upset.
Talking to Sue O'Connell.
So, Sue O'Connell, let's move on to this Florida. The Maryland guy. I forgot him. He should be first. This gentleman who is
Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yes, who was taken, and the Trump administration has admitted this. The lawyer has admitted this. He was mistakenly taken to El Salvador. Allegedly as a member of a Venezuelan gang, which he isn't. And we still don't know, even though the Supreme Court has said he should get out of there, that the Trump administration can get him out of there. They may not get him out of there.
No, I am chilled to the bone about the behavior of our government, our law enforcement, of ICE, of Border Patrol, regarding the blatant violation of the basic constitutional rights of people who are here in this country. You have the right, if you are in this country as a person, it does not say in the Constitution citizen, it says person.
Anybody.
To the right to due process before you are put in jail or anything, or deported. It's the same, we're in Boston. We're about to celebrate our 250th anniversary of the founding of this nation. And one of the founding principles of this country was to stop government overreach, to make sure that citizens had enough rights to fight back against the government so that your speech, your activity could not be silenced by the government. And we are now in a situation where students who are here on visas, who are welcome and earn the right to due process about their visa, right? So if your visa gets rejected or revoked, you are allowed due process. And this individual who is here, who had no reason to be arrested, no reason to be deported, no reason to be imprisoned, was done so by our government, and we're just sitting here saying nothing about it. I mean, this to me is the breaking point for the United States, when we are just taking people, violating their constitutional rights, and sending them to a horrific prison, which if you want to learn anything about this prison, if you want to fall into a rabbit hole at night, it's a horrendous place. And now our government, who basically kidnapped this person and sent them outside of our country, is saying, I don't know if we can get them back.
Well, by the way, continue that thought. Because they broke the law and violated this guy's rights, they're in a position where the Supreme Court didn't really order them to get him back because he's in the custody of a foreign government. They ordered him to work to get him back.
Right.
I would assume, I hate to say he's never coming back. I think he's never coming back.
No, we disappeared him.
What the Justice Department under Pam Bondi, I assume, is going to tell the court is we've communicated with the president of El Salvador. We're doing our best. Unfortunately, it's a sovereign nation, and so far, no. So because otherwise, if he came back, they'd have to admit, like that lawyer who was suspended, that we made a mistake.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, so it is really, so the message of this, it seems to me, is as long as you break the law and assert to the court that before you told us to obey the law, he was already or she was already in another country, you're safe. You can do whatever the hell you want to anybody.
And if you think they're just going to do that with people who are immigrants or migrants here, you're out of your mind.
I'm with you.
Right. I mean, we're just months away from folks getting picked up and being disappeared by our government. And also, these arrests that are happening around our state.
Tufts University?
Well, just not only Tufts, but also just in the streets of Chelsea and Lynn. If you really think that there are 300 dangerous gang members from El Salvador just running around Chelsea that weren't picked up before, I mean, you really think that that's picking people up just for violent crimes? I'm hearing from people, there's like parking tickets that haven't been paid, moving violations, and of course you can make the argument, you're here in our country, you should be obeying the laws, but everyone is due process in this country. It's the founding principle of our nation, And if you're just going to ignore it, don't be surprised if you're locked up in your house and you don't want to go outside because you're afraid you're the wrong color or look the wrong way or have a funny name.
And by the way, I'm so glad you said, because I get these texts all the time, that people that came into the country illegally have no due process here.
Not true.
That is not absolutely not true.
We should say the Supreme Court just ruled last week on this Alien Enemies Act or whatever. They unfortunately said Trump can use this law from 200 years ago, which
First
was
Amendment
about
rights,
war, was
search
not
and
about
seizure
this.
rights.
But you
have almost all the rights of an American citizen. So
yeah, you
reread
can't vote.
your civics
There's
book.
a couple of things you can't do, but due process is if you set foot in this country and you are on our territory, our nation, you have the right to due process.
And by the way, for those who are troubled by that, which is unfortunately a ton of our texters, after you've exercised your due process rights, if you were found to have been a gang member,
they can
deport you.
Yes. Right.
It isn't like you're eternally protected.
And they can hold you.
Exactly.
There's a million things they can do. It's not, you're not arguing for gang members who are here legally or illegally to stay in the country. It's their due process to have what happens to them. So, and it's also, not to go back to the Karen Reed thing, but I keep having this argument with Karen Reed supporters. You want Karen Reed to have her due process. So you should want anyone picked up illegally by ICE to have their due process as well, because that's why the statue of justice is wearing a blindfold, so that it's applied to everyone who's in this country equally.
Thank you very much, Sue. I'm clapping from here at the Brighton studio.
Black and white.
So here's another thing that just gets me going. This school teacher in Florida has lost her job. She's there for 11 years because a student asked the teacher to call the student by a different name. The teacher did, and she got fired.
Yeah, so this is, first of all, I want to point out that my name is Sue, but my legal name is Susan. Okay, so this is the ridiculousness that we're talking about with this case. So technically, if I'm in Florida and I say to my teacher, I'm a kid in school, and I say, I would like to be called Sue, and she or he doesn't get written permission from my parents to call me Sue instead of calling me Susan, they would be in violation of this.
But they're not going to go, it's really an anti-trans thing.
So what this is about trans issues, right? And trans rights, that if this student wanted to be called by a more feminine name or a feminine nickname or wanted different pronouns used, this teacher was fired, most likely because of the trans aspect of it. But the ridiculousness of it, that we're looking for these parental rights around stuff as minuscule as this, when you would hope that you have a teacher who's trying to make a open and inviting and fair and safe space for all students to live, and using someone's name that they asked for is, it's just another travesty and ridiculousness of the fight that they think they're fighting.
Yeah, and again, if you read the stories about this woman, this teacher, she was beloved, including by a lot of very conservative parents who said they even supported the law, but thought that the notion that she should be fired for this offense was insane. It obviously started by little rain boots, white-booted Ron DeSantis, and it's now 13 other states have adopted similar things to make teachers' lives even more painful and difficult than they are.
You know what I think should happen? I think that every parent in Florida should send a letter asking their kid be called something totally ridiculous.
I love that idea. Okay, before we go, Marjorie wants to take the low road for the 5 minutes.
Go ahead.
Well, sometimes I'm very invested in celebrity marriages. I was very invested in this Jennifer Garner, Ben Affleck, and
We're not talking about
that went
Garner
south
and Affleck.
years and years ago. But now, come on, Barack and Michelle Obama, there's divorce rumors. I mean,
well, remember
can this
Al
be
Gore
true?
and Tipper got divorced
I know.
not long after he had all those lights on in that big mansion trying to save the Arctic. But,
yeah, but he had the poodle lady in the massage parlor.
He did have the
I forgot about the
lady,
poodle lady. Yeah, Michelle
in
Obama.
Oregon, that is a true story in Oregon.
Michelle Obama was on a podcast. Of course, the right is just, can't help but talk about the Obamas and make it sound like because Barack Obama was in the same room with Jennifer Aniston that maybe they're having an affair and that maybe they're all getting divorced. So she did kind of address it in just saying, listen, I'm my own woman. I do what I want. And one of the reasons she was kind of asked about not attending Jimmy Carter's, Carter and Trump. The inaugural. And she basically said, I do what I want. I don't need to do anything. And this also is a good indicator for those of you who hope that someday she's going to run for president, that she is never
Yeah,
going to
Jim.
run for anything, Jim.
Barack Obama said on Meet the Press with Tim Russert that he was not running for president either. Months later, he did.
Oh, come on.
She cares about the country. Don't rule it out.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, I don't know if they're getting divorced, Marjorie. I can't really
I
tell
hope
you.
not.
It's
I hope
also not
too.
our business. You know,
It
really
isn't.
is not our
So anyway,
business.
Jim, I don't know if they're getting divorced or
What?
not.
90% of the stuff we talk about isn't
None of our
anybody's
Well, that's a
business.
very good point. That is actually a very good point that I hadn't thought about.
I mean,
That
it wouldn't
is
be
really
news
good
if it
point.
were our
No,
business.
Okay,
I mean,
your point's well taken.
know.
Let's move
Okay.
on. Sue O'Connell, it is great to see you as
Great, thank
always.
you.
Let's hear
Good
for
to see
Sue
you.
O'Connell.
I'm so glad we're going to be talking to you about the Karen Reed trial. People are still fascinated by it. John, anyway.
Sue is her name.
No,
Not John. John's
No,
somebody
but call
else.
me John. That's what
That's
I want to
okay.
be called.
We have been.
I have a note
I don't
from
wanna
my
get-
mother.
That's
I have
right.
a note from my mother.
That's right. Okay, we've been speaking with our
Are you a cat person or a dog person? Well, whatever your preference, the new documentary Pets explores what our relationship with animals says about being human.
There's a side of people that come out when they're talking about their pets that's very revealing.
I'm Juana Summers. My conversation with actress and documentary filmmaker Bryce Dallas Howard on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And GM Roth Design Remodeling. Dreams delivered. With custom kitchens, bathrooms, and additions. Serving New England for over 39 years. Learn more at gmroth.com. And Porter Square Books, hosting poet Martin Espada with his new collection of poems, Jailbreak of Sparrows, April 23rd at 7. Registration information at portersquarebooks.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. I am at the library. Marjorie is in Brighton. Whatever. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A lot of people are writing after they heard the music Inclusion Ensemble. Their concert is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. It is free. You go to Berklee, BERKLEE.edu, and you learn everything you need to know to go, and you should go. So next time you're in Jamaica Plain, keep an eye out for a new building on Washington Street. It's called the Lyndia. The project's namesake is the woman here with us now, Pine Street Inn President and Executive Director, Lyndia Downie. For the unfamiliar, Pine Street Inn is this region's largest shelter and service provider for people experiencing homelessness. And with us is one of the minds behind this terrific project, Rhodey Architects Principal and Co-Founder Eric Robinson. Eric, good to see you. And Lyndia, congratulations to you. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry I'm not there in person with you both today, but I'm dying to get the details, Lyndia. So tell us about the Lyndia. What's going to be in it? How many rooms? What are the amenities? Give us a scoop.
So it's 202 units of housing. 140 of those units are for people who are formerly homeless. They're small studio apartments. And people have moved in already. Marjorie, we're three-quarters full, I would say. We're still leasing up. Eric can talk to this, but the building's exquisite. It's beautiful. It's got sunlight and lots of common space. And the materials are they're very simple but lovely. There's nice artwork. And you know, if you're homeless, you went from sleeping with 300 people upstairs in our dorm with a bed that's about 3 feet from the other person into, you know, a little studio apartment that's yours with your own little kitchen and bathroom. It's exquisite.
Tell us what supportive housing is, yet again, for those who don't know.
So we Boston has really a strategy to focus on folks who are homeless the longest and try and get them out of homelessness, and many of those people have a disability. And so this housing is targeted really to a small group of folks we see, probably about 10% of the folks we see in shelter and on the street. And it's really housing that's affordable with an overlay of support services, everything from we're going to show you how to do your laundry again and grocery shop and cook for yourself to how we're going to keep you on your medication, help you with your health care, make sure you have primary care, runs the gamut, and all kinds of things in between.
There was a beautiful story in the Globe about one of the people who's living there now talking, and you could hear the pride in his quote about cooking a meal, that he was learning how to cook, and he had oil and spices on the counter. Before we move to Eric, we know you well enough, Lyndia Downie, to know that you had nothing to do with naming this
That's right.
the Lyndia, the most humble woman on the planet. How did it end up being called the Lyndia?
Well, I'm not sure I really know all that.
Does Eric know?
Well, I think a couple of board members suggested it to some other board members, and that's how it happened. But we all know there could have been hundreds of names on that building. There's beautiful wood paneling on the outside of the building. Every one of those
Having
names
said that,
had a
how does
name.
it make you feel?
Well, it's very humbling, and you know, I feel like I'm doing my job, and it's really nice of people to recognize it. But you know, I'm getting a lot of flack at home. The day after, I got a cup of tea from my husband with a little note on it saying the Lyndia. So you know, it's you know, kind of a.
But you know, Lyndia is a beautiful lyrical name. I think you know, it's an honor, obviously an honor to all the work you've done, but it's also kind of much better than like the Smith building or the Brown building.
So Eric, how did
Lyndia? I like it.
How did Rhodey and how'd you get involved in this thing?
Oh man, it was an amazing call that we received from actually the community builders who was a partner with Pine Street and on the project, and we had some, I'll say, loose connections to them in some of our previous work, and they asked us to interview for the project, and the goal of it was to really design a new type of building that is an affordable housing building, of course, but sets the caliber at our higher level for the residents of this place.
Tell us about the building. Tell us.
So
what it's like.
the building is it is amazing actually, and it's and I'm not talking about necessarily the design. The design's great. It's really based in the community of JP. It's on Washington Street. There's been a lot of development in Washington Street, of course, over the years. And what we really aspired to do is to create a building that was befitting the residents, which we believe everybody should have housing that's as befitting them as humans. And so what we started was try to figure out how to create a good civic neighbor in the community. And so we started actually at the sidewalk and created a much bigger sidewalk relationship, pushed the building back. And then as we started to think about the form of the building, really important to the team was to make sure that the residents had places that they could go that were protected, safe, but within the building confines. And so in the center of the building is actually a beautiful outdoor courtyard on the second floor that's south-facing, that's protected. And so you start to put these forces together, and basically the building lives between.
Can you explain, did you use the expression sidewalk experience? Was experience the word used? What does that mean by enlarging it? What do you achieve with that?
This building is going to be very active. There's a lot of folks coming in and out. There are residents, obviously. There's also Pine Street offices are there. We put their administrative offices there. And so we wanted it to actually have a nice moment on the sidewalk that we have planters, we have benches out in front. So we sort of created a real space in front of the building as sort of the entry sequence into the building. So when people come, they feel like they're coming home to something. And so that was really crucial to the design.
We're talking to Lyndia Downie, who runs the Pine Street Inn, and Eric Robinson, who is the principal behind Rhodey Architects, who are involved with the building.
You know, Erica, Medium.com did an interview with you and talked about what you talked to them about building, and Michael Murphy was also quoted in this piece, the founder of the Mass Design Group right in Boston, and he talked about the spiritual connection that we have with the spaces we live in. And I thought, wow, that's a really fascinating way to put it. What do you make of that line?
When I heard that podcast, I think it was a TED Talk.
Yeah.
I was actually driving through Vermont randomly, and it made me think a lot about my family and my father, and I think I might even said that because Michael and I had a sort of similar, I will say, upbringing where we were hands-on, working with our fathers on our house, and doing things of that nature. And I think it's just this sort of notion of this connection to the spaces that we inhabit. And, residential spaces are crucial and important because they have a different scale, but even a civic space like we are in now are important. And so I think understanding our relationship to light and air and space, those are all critical to forming that. And sort of those are the aspects that I think he was alluding to and I think that we believe in when we design our work.
So, Lyndia Downie, can we discuss a couple of aspects, starting with funding and how you came up with it, and then community issues, because how many times have we talked about communities either being scared or whatever it is, and how you overcome that kind of thing. In terms of funding, where all this money come from, and why did it come?
So these projects are built usually using the what is a federal tax credit program. The states gets an allocation of tax credits, and then you apply for them. And so Community Builders was the developer. We were the partner and are providing the services. So it's a combination of money from the city, from the state, some federal money through the Housing Authority, Boston Housing Authority, and then we raised an additional $10 million to help cover the support services for people in the building, because the public funding we have doesn't cover the entire cost. And we knew going in.
And now you have 1,100 units like this?
Yes, 1,100 units, yep.
And this, I assume, will serve as a model for comparable thing. How about the community? How about the community issue? What kind of opposition did you face? And if you did, how'd you overcome it?
So Eric knows
you want
this.
Eric into this?
No, but I think what I'd say is, Eric and I and the team from Community Builders, we had 18 meetings with the JP community across the board before we even had what I would call a formal process.
Really?
We went to the business association, we went to neighborhood associations, we met in people's kitchens on a Sunday afternoon and said, here's what we're thinking. We had initial designs from Rhodey. And then the formal process started. Listen,
what kind of reaction did you get in those initial meetings?
JP was amazing. This was a one-story warehouse that was in tough shape. It really wasn't the most attractive of buildings. JP wanted more affordable housing. There was some back and forth on density, so we took a floor off. We started with 6 floors. We went down a floor. The community pushed for the setback. They wanted it back from the road, and they wanted a nice streetscape. So the community process was really helpful in terms of the design. But I can't say enough about a neighborhood like JP where they stood up and said, we want housing, we want it to be affordable, and we'll support this, because that makes all the difference. And to be homeless and think that a neighborhood would say, hey, you can be part of our neighborhood now, that does so much for people. It just, it takes that stigma away, and you start to feel like, maybe I have a shot at a decent life here now. So JP was fabulous.
Lyndia Downie, you mentioned getting federal money. I wonder if you have to worry about the slashing that's going on under the Trump administration of federal money for almost everything. Does that impact you?
Well, we're keeping an eye on it. About 16% of our money is federal, and we are keeping an eye on it. Most of our federal money comes through the city of Boston, talking on a regular basis to the city. But look, every large city, even a lot of smaller communities in the Commonwealth, get federal money for housing.
Yeah.
And we've already got a housing crisis, and any cuts will be devastating because we're already behind the 8 ball. So we're watching it.
Eric Robinson, we hear all the time that one of the reasons we have what looks, when you drive around Boston, endless construction of luxury housing, new apartment buildings that are really expensive. And you hear all the time that you just can't afford, developers just can't afford to build affordable housing. Is that true?
No.
Well, elaborate.
I think what we're seeing, we do both. So we do market rate and affordable, and also mixed income, which is more workforce, where you sort of have a blended. So we do it all, and it's been amazing. And I think the reality of the process is quite different from the standpoint of going through the approvals process with the funding sort of cycles and the different aspects of when you need to submit things for the city and for review through the state or whatever the process is. It's just a different sequence and cadence of deliverables, meetings, process that not all developers, can do both, right? Not all of them can do market rate and also affordable. So I think it's about learning a different way to deliver a project. And, we do have developers that do both. And so it's just a different process, but I believe everybody can do it.
So you can do it and make a reasonable profit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can't talk about profit because I'm an architect and, we don't make that much money. But but I think in terms of actually doing the work and delivering the projects, yes.
Okay.
Well, but stay on this for a minute. Marjorie's obsession of late has been from Ezra Klein to the guy we had here a couple of weeks ago who wrote Why Nothing Works, Mark Dunkelman from Brown, is that the liberals who believe in these, not just the millions of kinds of things, have allowed roadblocks to be built where, one objection about a turtle, and I care about turtles, can stop a major project even if everything else is fine. This is really for both of you. Do you think about how difficult it is to do what I think most caring people want done, and how it can be streamlined without taking away other people's rights to have their voices heard? Do you know what I mean? Of course you do. Okay, fine. Okay.
That's my everyday. I mean, I think that...
is it fixable or is it not?
So I believe it's fixable, but I think it also puts an onus on myself as the designer and the leader of the process in terms of dealing with the community outreach. And, we started the firm in Dorchester 18 years ago with a goal to do better by the communities that we're working in. And I think so much of what we have found is communication is the key to success. And when NIMBYism and YIMBYism and all those things are sort of active in the world, it really comes down to the concern of change and not understanding how a change can affect them positively too. It's sort of like it bracketed in, it's a negative to us, but it can be positive as well. And so I think what we strive in my firm is to make sure that we are communicating what are the benefits of this project for you as a community member, and what is that lens? And that just takes time.
Well, give us an example, Lyndia. What were when you, in those 18 meetings, what were you saying were the benefits, not just for the people you're serving, but for the surrounding community? What was the pitch?
Well, I think the pitch initially was, broadly, we need more housing, period, and we need more affordable housing. JP's gotten really expensive over the past 20 years, right? JP, when I first moved to Boston, you could actually buy a place or rent in JP. You can't do that anymore. And I think many people in JP recognize that a lot of higher-end housing has been built. There's been a lot of, conversions in JP of 3 families to condominiums. A lot of long-term residents who want to stay in JP are worried about being able to stay. So I think we heard that. Interestingly, the community was very interested in the design and how the building looked. And then we spent a lot of time touring, having people tour other buildings, come over and meet some of the tenants, make sure nobody's hanging around out front. Drive by, here's a list of all of other properties, don't take our word for it. We did get sued on this project by the owner of some property across the street. We ended up settling, and it was over parking. But, Jim and Marjorie, I would say that NIMBY cuts across liberal and conservative lines. It's kind of... No matter what community you go to right now, if there's a anti-development bias, everybody's kind of on that train. And it's, interestingly enough, cuts across, I think, lots of both political spectrums because there's such a fear factor. And we've kind of done ourselves in as a state by not being willing to push the envelope farther.
Lyndia, you mentioned prices going through the roof in Jamaica Plain, and they're going through the roof all over the place. I wonder now, I think the stereotype is that people who are homeless are people that have alcohol problems or they have mental health problems. But I wonder if you're seeing people who just got evicted and they can't do the first month, last month whole dance you have to do to get an apartment. They don't have any money.
Yeah. So we are seeing more and more people that are getting priced out of the market, more and more people that are working, more and more people on a fixed income. They lose their housing, they can't get back in. Interestingly, people always say to me, if we do eviction prevention, will that help? Sure, it will help. Very few people come to us directly from eviction. What happens is very few of our guests were primary leaseholders or owners. Some were, but mostly they're already doubled and tripled up.
Yeah.
And they're staying with a family member or a friend, or they're renting, 6 people in a 2-bedroom apartment and something happens to the primary leaseholder, and then people show up with us. So it's complicated. Often I wish we could get back 3 or 4 years before people show up at our door, because that's really, for a lot of people, the slide that happens. But if you think about it, last month's rent, security, you're talking $7,000, $8,000. You can't do that if you're, making minimum wage in Boston. There's no way.
So, Eric, the bad news for you is 2 people have texted and say you look exactly like J.D. Vance, which we're going to try to overlook that.
Oh no!
Sorry, it's not me. It's our listeners. So we got to get over that. Now I can't even look at you when I'm talking to you.
That's just his aesthetics, right? That's not. That's fine.
That's not the man. That's not who the man is.
I'm a different guy.
You're doing other stuff. Just so it's not just this incredibly wonderful project. Are you doing the Fieldhouse deal?
We are.
Could you explain what that is?
Sure. So as I mentioned, Rhodey started in Dorchester, and during that time, back in 18 years ago or so, we're community guys, and so my boys, they're now 22 and 17, but at the time, we were close to the Richard family and Martin Richard family, and they played soccer together and all the things that go with that, and so when everything that happened, and it's amazing, we're standing here and they're setting up for the marathon right now. It's been a long haul, but the Martin Richard Foundation and the Boys and Girls Club of Dorchester have put their sort of brains together and their power together to create this really unbelievable state-of-the-art facility that is kind of called a field house, but it has a whole bunch of other services in there that will be really supportive to the Dorchester community on a whole, certainly focused on youth, but it'll have a full-size turf field inside. It'll have basketball courts inside, a track, a black box theater, teaching kitchens. It's going to be an amazing facility that will be run in partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubhouse that's in Dorchester also. So
sounds fabulous. Lyndia, I'm sorry, Margie.
I was just going to say, we have a texter. You hear this a lot, Lyndia. People saying, why do homeless people get these nice new apartments when working people are contributing their taxes and don't think it's fair? What do you say to these people?
Look, everybody needs a place to live. We need more workforce housing. Absolutely, 100%. One of the things I say, though, when you don't house people that are homeless for the long term, they show up somewhere else. They're in the ER. They're frequently in other really expensive systems. It's bad for business, by the way. Homelessness is bad for everybody, but who wants people hanging out on the street when you have a retail business? And so there's a bigger, I think, imperative here, but we should be doing housing across the board, and we got to figure out how to make it cheaper and faster and better. There's no question. Everybody should have a shot at this kind of housing.
We only have a minute or two left. Homelessness numbers are up modestly, but not amongst veterans. So why is one number gone down and the larger numbers gone up?
Well, there's been a very concerted effort to put a lot of resource into veterans housing and ending veterans homelessness. So we're probably have reduced the number by about 50% in Massachusetts over the past 5 years. The work continues. Not this census. We don't have this past year's census, but the census in 24, we didn't have a single vet outside on the street that we counted. Now, we had vets in shelter, but the number was small. So that's really about, we resourced it, we targeted that money to vets, and you can see what a difference it made.
Can you, by the way, we only have a minute left. You're pinestreetin.org if people want to learn more and contribute. How do they find your operation there?
RhodeyArchitects.com.
And Rhodey is R-O-D-E?
Yes.
RhodeyArchitects.com. Yes. I'm sorry, Marjorie.
No, I was just going to say congratulations to you both, and I can't wait to get down there and see the Lyndia, and I think it's a great name.
Is more in the work? I mean, we talked about in 1,100. You've achieved 1,100 of these units after you decided this is your top priority a bunch of years ago. Are more in the works?
So we have another 99 units. We're converting a hotel with community builders. They're doing the development work. That's in Dorchester.
Is that the Comfort Inn deal?
Yep.
That's the Comfort Inn deal.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we're maybe
amazing. Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
8 months away, we hope, from being finished with construction. And, we continue to look to see if we can find partners and sites.
It's terrific. Congratulations to you both. It's great to see you both. And we love the name. We really
Yes, we do.
And
thank you.
It's deserved.
Thank you. We have been speaking with Lyndia Downie from the Pine Street Inn and Eric Robinson, principal and co-founder of the Rhodey Architects. And that is, again, Eric Robinson and Lyndia Downie. Coming up after a quick break, just enough time for two more things. Thanks again for coming in. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, next Friday marks the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's Ride. But what's the real story of the artisan, family man, and North End neighbor? We dive into the lesser-known details of Paul Revere. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. BostonSpeakers.org. And Hammond Castle Museum, presenting Eric Pape, The Fair God, the largest public collection with many pieces unseen for nearly a century. On view April 5th through April 27th. On-site parking and tours of the museum available. HammondCastle.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live. Well, I am live at the Boston Public Library, and Marjorie is live as well. We're on youtube.com/GBH News. It is time for two more things. Marjorie, you would be first. Take it away.
Well, people may know that President Trump left the White House this morning to get his physical exam, but maybe we should be worried more about what's in his head. Here's the New Republic today. Many investors are beginning to wonder if the president is not well in the head, as in mentally ill, says Tom Lee, who is this big guy with this funding analysis firm, F. Insights. The concern is that this may not be ideology he's working on with the tariffs, that they've quietly wondered if the president might be insane, their word, not mine. But he's not the first person to bring this up, Jim. Remember last year that 200 health professionals published this article, and they were saying Donald Trump is dangerous because he has symptoms of severe, untreatable personality disorder. We had this guy, Leonard Glass, on. We're going to play some sound from him in a minute.
Leonard, sure.
Yeah, he's a psychiatrist, a psychoanalyst, co-author of the 2017 book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. Here he is.
He seems to be deteriorating cognitively.
That's what Dr. Glass, I should say, said about Donald Trump. And, I thought he was unhinged back in 2016. And there was another group of people that said that at the same time. Now, it's good to be a narcissist in some ways. But the problem is if you are overboard and you become irrational, your charisma and your optimism turns to unable to listen to advice from anybody, including the economists that say you're driving us all down the drain with your tariff policies. And here is one more thing. This is President Trump seeming to revel in the idea of other countries coming to him to kiss his ass to negotiate those tariffs.
I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir.
Okay. That's the most powerful man on the face of the earth, our president, Donald Trump. Oh, my.
Okay, I have a related thing. A bunch of people on the show in the last month or two have commented on Trump's attacks on law firms, universities, with this thought that when you give in to bullies, you should expect more bullying on the way. One university apparently did not get the message, one did. The did not is Columbia. In a misguided attempt to protect $400 million in threatened federal funding from the feds, the university agreed to disgraceful conditions dictated by Trump, including assaults on academic freedom. Did that satisfy the bullying Trump administration? Of course it didn't. Now they are considering putting Columbia under a consent decree, that'd be by a court, because the administration is skeptical that Columbia will really heal to the White House as promised. Can it get more humiliating and scary? One place that did get the don't give in to bullies message is the fellow Ivy League institution, Princeton, and its president, Christopher Eisgruber. Here's part of what he said the other day on The Daily.
It is a crisis, right? I mean, the funding that is essential to the quality of American research and America's universities is under threat. That's a crisis for universities, and it is a crisis for our country. But I will say this, I think even when universities have to concede or make concessions because they may be forced to do that in order to protect people, I think they need to speak up under those circumstances and recognize the principles at stake.
He went on to say on the Daily, Princeton will not make concessions, that it's essential for us to protect academic freedom. By the way, Khalil Gibran Muhammad from Princeton will be with us on Monday. As Fiona Hell said on our show the other day, collective action is the key. Very few university leaders have the courage and integrity of Eisgruber. So if they're too weak to stand up alone, as Columbia was and is, join forces. Defend academic freedom together. Stand up to bullying together. So you set an example for all the rest of us. Check out this guy, President Chris Eisgruber from Princeton. That's it, Marjorie.
Okay, up next after the news, we're going to talk with BU researcher Joan Donovan. We're going to talk to her for our media segment about, of course, the media, and also about her organizing these nonviolent protests against Tesla. That's next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Support the news you trust by donating your car, truck, or other used vehicle to our vehicle donation program. You'll have more space in the driveway this spring, and you may earn a tax advantage. Learn more at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit, independent, and assisted living residence with a tradition of service, working with Cambridge area seniors for more than 130 years. You can learn more at thecambridgehomes.org/tradition. And Bernadine Sung Megason with Compass Real Estate, serving buyers and sellers throughout Greater Boston. Learn more at homesbybernadine.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. It's Press Play, media analysis segment with Boston University disinformation researcher Joan Donovan. We'll talk about how billionaires like Zuckerberg and Musk are laying the groundwork for oligarchy, AI's promise and pitfalls, and how there is fear in student newsrooms across the country.
I'm Marjorie.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. U.S. markets are recovering some losses a day after their sell-off, the volatility underscoring global uncertainty and anxiety over President Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is questioning whether members of Congress may have improperly taken advantage of the current turmoil in the stock market.
There are several members of Congress who will be aggressively demanding answers and transparency, particularly as it relates to stock purchase decisions that may have occurred over the last few days.
While President Trump has temporarily relaxed tariffs for most countries, he's holding firm against China by imposing 145% levies. China shot back with a tariff of 125%. President Trump's trade war is taking a toll on consumer sentiment. NPR's Scott Horsley reports a new survey from the University of Michigan finds Americans increasingly gloomy about the economic outlook.
Consumer sentiment fell in April for the fourth month in a row and has now dropped by 30% since the end of last year. People across the political spectrum are less optimistic about business conditions, personal finances, and inflation. More than twice as many people are worried about the job market now as were back in November. Concerns about rising unemployment are the highest they've been since 2009, when the economy was shedding hundreds of thousands of jobs every month. The survey was conducted around the time President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on imports from around the world. It does not account for his partial backtracking earlier this week. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
White House envoy Steve Witkoff arrived in Russia today for a previously unannounced visit. The Kremlin confirms Witkoff's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. NPR's Charles Maines has the latest from Moscow.
According to flight tracker data, Witkoff's plane touched down in Russia's second city of St. Petersburg, where Putin is currently spending the day on a work trip. The meeting marks Witkoff's third sit-down with the Kremlin leader in the past 2 months. Witkoff's arrival comes as President Trump has expressed growing frustration with Moscow's lack of progress in talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. Trump has even threatened secondary tariffs and sanctions on Russian oil exports, a major pillar of the Russian economy, if he decides the Kremlin leader is dragging out negotiations to further his military aims. Charles Baines, NPR News, Moscow.
This weekend marks a religiously significant period for both Jewish and Christian observances, Passover coinciding with Palm Sunday. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow is up 476 points, more than 1%. The S&P is up 1.4%, NASDAQ up 1.5%. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Around half of the world's North Atlantic right whales are currently swimming in the Massachusetts waters. Local experts tell CAI's Ziv Zuckoff this week marks peak right whale season.
Experts with the Center for Coastal Studies in Provincetown say they've seen more than 162 individual right whales in recent weeks. That's out of a total of about 370. The critically endangered whales are taking advantage of widespread plankton patches to feed on. Amy James, aerial survey coordinator for the center, says they've drawn 5 of the 10 newborn right whales and their mothers to local waters.
We're really happy to see that those animals have made that long swim from the southeast U.S., so that's one big milestone checked off the list for them.
In the next 3 weeks, James says she expects most of the whales to continue their migration into northern waters.
That's Eve Zuckoff for Connecting the Commonwealth. Officials in Worcester say federal authorities did not make them aware of revoked student visas. Mass Live reporting that Worcester Mayor Joe Petty's chief of staff said yesterday their office was never notified that 16 international students at 2 Worcester-based universities, there were 12 at Clark and 4 at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, had their student visas revoked by the Trump administration. U.S. Rep. Jim McGovern, who represents that region, sharply criticized Trump, saying, quote, Trump's outrageous attacks on students' civil rights and liberties are unconstitutional and wrong. In sports, Red Sox open a series with Chicago White Sox in Chicago tonight. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Houston Bradley, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. At least Jim is, and I am in the Brighton studio. We're both streaming, though, at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to repeat that we're going to be joined on Monday by retired federal Judge Nancy Gertner, who knows everything there is to know about the law in terms of the president and everybody else. Corby Kummer, our food man. Khalil Gibran Mohammed, who teaches at Princeton. He teaches part-time at Harvard. Harvard is up in the air, I think, still about what they're going to do about these demands from the Trump administration to heal to his requests. But Princeton is fighting back, as you just talked about, Jim. On Tuesday, we're also going to be joined at the Boston Public Library by extraordinary filmmaker Ken Burns.
And the governor's with us on the 25th. Hello again, Marjorie.
Hello again, Jim.
It's once again time for our Friday media analysis segment, Press Play. With us for this week's edition, Joan Donovan. Joan is the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute and BU Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies. She's the author of the 2023 book, Meme Wars, The Untold Story of the Online Battles Upending Democracy in America, was the research director of the Harvard Kennedy School's Shorenstein Center on Media Politics and Public Policy, and a co-creator of the beaver emoji. Joan, it is great to see you. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
It's wonderful
Thank
to see you.
Sorry I'm not there with you in person, Joan, but I did not know, and I wanted to ask you, first off, before we get to the media stuff, you're behind these nonviolent, we want to emphasize the nonviolent protests against Tesla. What have you done?
Yeah, I seem to have stepped in it. In early February, I was really irked, especially as Doge started to get running up, and I was very, like others, affected by Musk's Nazi-like salute on Inauguration Day. And as someone who's studied propaganda and disinformation as well as power, it struck me that Musk was a particular threat to U.S. democracy. And I just was looking around in the news, and I saw that there was a couple of people in Maine that decided to picket at a Tesla charging station. And I thought to myself, we have a big Tesla showroom here on Boylston Street in Boston. It's not going to hurt me to go out and spend a Saturday picketing. And so I invited some friends, and I posted about it on Blue Sky. And it just caught on in a huge way. So the first protest here in Boston was on February 15th, and there were about a dozen or so other protests across the nation. But it really got rolling when a friend of mine who's a documentarian, Alex Winter, he's also well known for being Bill S. Preston and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He decided that he was going to picket at the Tesla in LA where he lives. And so we were joking about how this, might catch on. And now we have thousands of people every Saturday all across the nation picketing Musk. And we chose this tactic in particular because it's nonviolent, because it's very visible, it's publicly accessible, it is free, and it gives people space in a way to build other tactics and strategy. And so I've been really impressed by all the folks that I've met in Boston, older folks that care about Social Security and understand what the government is for, all the way down to we had some kids in high school that were afraid of what was going to happen with the Department of Education.
You're not unused to threats because of your work. Did you get them for this?
Oh, my goodness. So the death threats have been ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I study, intimidation online and harassment and all the bad things that go on the internet. And so in the past, I've had other issues related to research that I do where I point out propaganda or, flaws in the way that technology is designed. And so this is different though. The kinds of threats that I'm getting are mostly from patrons or users on X. They're amplified by folks like Laura Loomer. People are calling me a domestic terrorist. They're claiming that I'm coordinating mass violence against Tesla. And it's scary. I'm part of the working class here in Boston. It's a, proud tradition that we have, that we stand up for what we believe in here in Boston. And so, for me, it's not great. It does scare me sometimes, especially instances where they're trying to figure out what my address is, or they're trying to reset my email password, stuff like that. But for the most part, I felt very supported by people in Boston and in the movement who are also going through similar things. I think the big part of this is that Musk and others are doing what Elon Musk in particular is claiming all kinds of ridiculous things about this movement, that we're all paid by, so-and-so or whatever other billionaire. And that's creating a lot of consternation and amplifying the threats.
One last thing about Tesla before we do move to media issues. First of all, the hashtag is Tesla Takeover. Am I right about that?
Tesla Takedown.
Takedown, I'm sorry, Takedown. Last thing, we'll move from the big picture with Tesla to the small picture. How do you feel about someone like me who bought a Tesla 2 years ago and hasn't sold it? Tell the truth. You can be as honest
I'm
as
totally
you want.
fine with it.
Are you really, or are you just being nice?
No, because to be honest with you, it's, EVs are, back then, Tesla was the top brand. Our point isn't, I think the point of the movement has very little to do with Tesla as an automobile, or even Tesla workers, who I think should unionize because they're also being exploited. The main point of the protests is that Musk's wealth is the thing that gives him political power. And his wealth, especially his liquid wealth, is tied directly to the Tesla stock prices. And so putting pressure on Tesla creates a different kind of momentum around trying to get Musk out of office. But we have people that have Teslas come to, the protests. They put a little sticker on their car that says, "I bought this before we knew he was crazy." And, people, people have been very generous about it, I think. And if you go to one of these Tesla takedown protests, you'll find it's very fun and energetic. We have a 15-piece brass band that's been showing up, and So people are there to build community for the most part.
Great. You're a kind soul. So you wrote a piece. Marjorie and I talked about this a lot at the time, but not with the level of understanding that you did when Zuckerberg dumped fact-checking and twisted himself into a pretzel about how it was better and it was going to be even better in terms of content moderation. You wrote a piece in The Guardian about it. It said, looking back on the history of content moderation, one can easily conclude that social media companies tailor their products to suit the needs of those with the power to regulate them. You want to fill in a blank or two for us?
Yeah, studying this for the last 10 years, we've started to really show the patterns and innovation around social media. And social media as a technology has really failed to innovate anytime they get political pressure. And this has led to a lot of stasis in social media design. And so things that came up over the last few years, like fact-checking as a way to deal with political suppression and oppression that's happening on these platforms, wasn't something that was just implemented in the US, but this was implemented all over the world, wherever Facebook has websites. And so as a result, fact-checking only got removed in the United States. And that's because when you look at the statistics and what it was actually being fact-checked, it was predominantly right-wing disinformation. And so there were all of these different studies that have gone into understanding this, including ones from colleagues at Harvard that wrote a book called Network Propaganda. And what you find is that social media is a very potent delivery system for ideologies and political ideas. And as a result, the people who benefit the most from the design staying the same and there being no content moderation tend to be liars, thieves, grifters, and unfortunately also politicians.
Mm-hmm. We spoke, I think in a related note, we have used the Tim Snyder anticipatory obedience line repeatedly. We all know about the LA Times editorials, we know about around Kamala Harris, and the Washington Post. Is that more of the same thing? Is that just a variation on the social media theme you're talking about?
Yeah, I think what we're going through right now, and this is, we have to separate a couple of words here. There's the goals of the oligarchs or the very, very rich, which are actually different from the goals of the fascists. And so when you think about these two terms, which have entered into the US lexicon pretty heavily in the last few months, the oligarchs really want to move us towards a technologically enabled government, where you would have very little people, just like you would in a social media company. You have very few people administrating the work the work for thousands or millions of other people. And so the oligarchs want to shrink the workforce and then control with AI. But what they can't do that without the complicity of major newspapers, right? The sort of last line of defense of society are our journalists. And so the more that the oligarchs can buy up major media properties and turn that trust that we've built with things like places like the Washington Post into another tabloid or another political rag, the less resistance we're going to have to the oligarch class. And as well, the less writing and deep investigation that we're going to have related to the goings-on in the government as it turns from a democracy into a kind of competitive fascist state. And what's interesting to me about all of this shift is that if the oligarchs win, then we're in a very different form of government, because what they're doing is essentially paying politicians to carry out their ideas about what society should look like. And if the fascists win, then we're headed for a very deep and painful overtaking of American values. And this goes hand in hand with shutting down papers of record and doing their best to quell any kind of uproar that might be triggered by good journalism. And in that sense, I'm not surprised to see places like Wired have some of the best journalism on government, because Wired sourcing is tied so closely into Silicon Valley in that movement of the oligarchs towards a technocratic government, that they're really at the forefront of journalism, where our political reporters are somewhat sidelined.
You know what I think is very interesting, speaking of oligarchs, obviously Rupert Murdoch has got billions of dollars, owns Fox News and other media operations, including the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal, which you think of as kind of a little bit more conservative Republican in the sense of non-fascist, but big business and free trade and stuff, they've been tough on Trump.
Editorially, you mean?
Yeah, so what do you make of that? It's kind of schizophrenic, because Fox is obviously in Trump's pocket, but the Wall Street Journal, no.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, history is a good guide here, where I think when Trump was reelected, a lot of people expected more of the same, but with Trump's added conjecture on the campaign trail that he was going to open up business, and he was really going to deregulate and make sure that the cost of everything went down. And that's not playing out. Right, and so what you have to do at that point is start to look more closely at, well, who is giving Trump advice? And of course, the last week's Peter Navarro scandal has been huge in terms of letting us, as the general public, but journalists, understand that Trump has surrounded himself with people who, in Navarro's case, will literally make up experts so that he can say things that are completely out of hand.
Can you explain that in his book? He recreates his last name to create it. Explain what happened.
So going back, I've actually fact-checked this. Going back to at least one book that he wrote in 2006.
Before he went to jail.
Before he went to jail, yeah. He used an anagram of Ron Vara, which his last name is Navarro.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's in order to make claims about tariffs in China. And it's interesting in his books because these Ron Vara quotes are pull quotes, and they're the quotes that open up the chapters. And it's him, right? And so, Elon Musk, of course, this last week has called him out because when you mess and manipulate markets, it affects such a huge amount of the moneyed elite. And Trump, I think, really was listening very closely and intensely to Navarro and others. And then there's, what we just came out of break to talk about, the insider trading. So there is some elements that have been learned from the world of cryptocurrency in terms of a pump and dump scam. So you make the market fall, you buy stocks. Over the course of the last week on Twitter, buy the dip has been trending.
Yes.
And so people are buying into this dip, and some apparently knew earlier than others that Trump was going to pause the tariffs. And what that suggests is that the power of the government is being used to manipulate world markets, and the people that are supposed to be holding the executive branch accountable and making sure that these things don't happen, they're also enriching themselves. And so I'm very intrigued to see what these investigations look like. But ultimately, I just don't think that the Wall Street Journal, just like the rest of us, have faced something like this historically. And it's going to take us some time to unravel what the actual motives are. But if we look back and we find out that, so-and-so made $100 million or $200 million in the minutes before Trump pauses the tariffs, it's going to be really hard for them to prove that they weren't insider trading.
By the way, for people who are in denial about all those kinds of things about insider trading, I don't know if people have seen the video in the Oval Office that I've read Trump didn't know was being made when he's pointing to a couple of really wealthy guys there, talking about he made, whatever he said, $100 million, he made X number of dollars in those 4 hours between his posts and the end. Joan Donovan from BU, we've asked this of a bunch of people, but you are so research-based and data-based that I think your opinion would be even more valuable. I worry a lot, and I don't know if Marjorie does, who comes from the print world, that it's not just editorial pages like the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times we have to worry about, but news pages. And we have two different opinions in this segment. Marty Barron said he stays, obviously former editor of the Washington Post, stays in close touch with a lot of reporters, and he doesn't see that problem at all in the news pages. Chuck Todd was on a few days before, formerly Meet the Press, and says he speaks to a lot of reporters at NBC, and they're saying they're doing some self-censoring. And the example I picked with Marty Barron was that when the columnist Ruth Marcus quit, she acknowledged in her New Yorker piece that in at least two of her writings, she had self-censored. She had muted her criticism of Bezos in one case, and I think Trump in the other, I'm not sure. So the long-winded question to you is, do you worry, not just in the non-fact-checking world of social media, but in the print news pages of America, do you worry about self-censorship even by responsible journalists?
Yeah, I worry about it not just in journalism, but also in academia. People are picking what they study or what they write about based on, a bunch of different calculus. One of the calculus being, am I going to be harassed for this? Is this going to lead to me being fired?
Do you know of this, or do you worry about this?
I know of this because I live this in academia, but I am also in touch with a lot of journalists, two of which recently left the Washington Post. And now have different positions. One is at the New York Times. And his position particularly was on political economy and looking at the politics and economic decisions of the White House. And he felt that he could not do that kind of work anymore at the Washington Post. And, I think part of it is you have these moments where, and I am certainly no stranger to this, where you do speak truth to power and you need where you work or your institution to back you up. And when they don't back you up or they kneecap you, you're the one on the line, not them.
Which, by the way, not only happened to you at Harvard, but arguably, and I think fairly convincingly, happened to you in conjunction with a $500 million donation, if I recall correctly, from Zuckerberg and his wife to Harvard, and all of a sudden you were gone.
Yeah. So I've been researching social media exploitation and disinformation for years at Harvard. And when I got access to the Facebook files from Frances Haugen and I was going to publish them, immediately Harvard put a stop to my work and my research. And then also Chan Zuckerberg gave $500 million to Harvard, and then I was escorted out. And I think what's important here is that we can't let moneyed interests, we can't let big tech take over our entire commons for news and information. And so I do think that as we imagine a world in which free speech actually works, we do need our institutions to stand up and say, well, we're not going to capitulate. In academia, it's happening around studies that involve diversity, equity, and inclusion. So anybody that does any research, let's say in education or in even in law schools that involve bringing people into the field that had been historically excluded, these kinds of research studies are being halted all over the United States. Not just because the government funding for them is being pulled, but also because if the fields of these research feel as if there's no trajectory for students, then those fields disappear.
Joan Dunham, given what you just said about the $500 million donation from Zuckerberg to Harvard and your departure shortly thereafter, what do you think Harvard will do about this threat from the Trump administration withholding $9 billion worth of funds for them, Mass General, Brigham, their teaching hospitals, if they don't knuckle under too? What do you think they're going to do?
Unfortunately, I think you got your answer with the forced resignation of Claudine Gay. When Gay was forced out of her position, when you look at the quote-unquote evidence of plagiarism, it's not really there. It would not be anything that I would remove a student from a class or fail them for. But the larger context in which she was pushed out was very much what we see happening day in and day out in the new Trump administration, which is that anyone that comes from a background where they're not straight white and male is going to be considered quote unquote a diversity hire. And it's really just unfair to the accomplishments of all of the people in the world that have earned their jobs. And unfortunately at Harvard, the political apparatus that runs Harvard, I don't mean to sound like conspiratorial, but Harvard is the place where politicians are made. And they do tend to capitulate to whoever's in power at the time. And so I'm most concerned about the students, especially those that are going to be retroactively targeted for student protests. We're seeing this now with the international students being viciously arrested and then deported. And these are the kinds of things that you would hope a university would stand up and say no more to. These are the kinds of things where you hope that a university, especially with a law school like Harvard, would step in and say, we are going to take on and create a law clinic that helps these students. And you don't see that.
Yeah.
We're over time, but if you can stay one more minute. Speaking of students, your colleague, Brian McGrory, is here from time to time, and he's doing wonderful work with students that we talked to about local journalism. We're going to talk more about it. We've mentioned on the show recently that some wonderful student newspapers, and there are some fabulous ones that have been doing brilliant work, are no longer printing photographs of pro-Palestinian demonstrators, the names of pro-Palestinian demonstrators. And about a week after we read that some journalists themselves, student journalists, are being threatened. And there's discussion about pulling down the stories or deleting the names of the writers. If you were the czarina of all this stuff, how would you, I was going to say rule, but what's the right thing to do?
I mean, I'm in favor of giving more power to the people. I understand the risks, especially as someone who's sort of faced these things in the past, is, when you're going to school and, a student protest happens, the accusations against these student protesters are really horrible. The claims that they're, all supporters of Hamas. And,
right.
It's just overblown. And, but I do think that we owe it to each other to make sure that we protect one another. And, I'm all for ensuring the integrity of our journalism, but also these are really, I don't know how to describe it other than super dark times where students who may have been proud to give a quote or now find themselves entangled in an international, fascist takeover of the government. One of the biggest things you can really start to titrate and understand what's happening is if there are words that you feel like you can no longer say and opinions that you feel that you can no longer have, not because, your friends are going to, look at you with a side eye, but because you're afraid of the government coming to take you in the middle of the night. Like, the thing that keeps me up at night is I don't want Kash Patel showing up at my house. Right?
God.
Like, I live with my mom. She does not need that man in her house. But she's particularly worried about her, Social Security and things that she's amassed over the years in terms of entitlements, and she's afraid of what's going to happen. So I say that all to say that I think student journalists are really important at this juncture, but I do wonder if they're going to keep up the intensity of the coverage that they've had of other student movements if this is the consequence of telling the truth.
Joan Donovan, you were fabulous, and we really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for being with us, Joan Donovan. We have been speaking, obviously, with Joan Donovan, founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute and a BU Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies, and she does great work. And she also organized those protests, anti-violent protests. No need if you're a Tesla owner to worry, Jim.
Thank you.
Against the company. Okay, after a quick break, we're opening up the phone and text lines, talking about a lighter subject, I think.
Well,
a new study finds our pets do as much for our well-being as our spouses. Our question is it time to dump your man and get a dog? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Are you a cat person or a dog person? Well, whatever your preference, the new documentary Pets explores what our relationship with animals says about being human.
There's a side of people that come out when they're talking about their pets that's very revealing.
I'm Juana Summers. My conversation with actress and documentary filmmaker Bryce Dallas Howard on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Dregan, Jim Browdy. We are live at the Boston Public Library. Marjorie's in Brighton. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tuesday of next week, Ken Burns will join us in person here at the Boston Public Library. And by the way, in 25 minutes, the Culture Show is live from the library. So if you're here, please stay. It's great to watch and listen to. And if you're not here, maybe come on down. In a recent study published in the journal Social Indicators Research, which Margie and I read regularly, scientists determined that our pets do as much for our mental well-being as human companions. The study actually quantified, I don't know how, the satisfaction we get from pets into a dollar amount, $90,000 a year in life satisfaction. Our number is 877-301-8970. Call or text. Our question is, do you buy it? And particularly in this moment of high anxiety, we discussed this at the top of the show, the incredible tension and stress that people feel. Which do you find to be more of a comfort? Honestly, your partner, your life partner, whatever, your close friends, or your dog? How about other pets? How much do you think a gerbil is worth, for example, in yearly happiness, $50, whatever it is? And Marjorie's question, as she has asked for years and years on the show, who wouldn't pick their pet over their spouse? 877-301-8970. You said this is a frivolous topic. I don't think it is frivolous in the slightest, by the way. People find incredible consolation and comfort and warmth and happiness with their damn dog. And by the way, I never had a dog, as you know, my whole life, till both of my daughters got dogs less than 10 years ago. And I totally get this, which I didn't, and I used to ridicule you about it for years and years.
Okay, I think we should start with a little sound from one of the best movies of all time.
Here we go.
Best in Show.
Best in Show.
This is an ode to a wonderful little terrier. God loves the terriers. Forget your spouse. Stick with the holiest breed of dogs, and that, of course, is a terrier. Here it is.
God loves a terrier. Yes, he does. God loves a terrier. That's because small, sturdy, bright, and true, they give their love to you. God didn't miss a stitch. Be it dog or be it bitch, when he made the Norwich Merrier with its cute little derriere. Yes, God loves a terrier.
Is that Parker Posey? Is the woman?
No, it's not Parker Posey.
Oh, okay.
Parker Posey was one of the...
Catherine O'Hara, thank you.
Yeah,
that
was
thank
she
you
was
a
the one
lot.
with the big dog and the braces on her teeth.
That's right. 877-301-8970 is our number.
Here's a little quote before we get to the calls and texts from Katie Glass, who wrote a wonderful piece about her chocolate lab bear in the New York Times. Here's what she says. First start, dogs make brilliant housemates. Don't leave the toilet seat up. Bear doesn't abandon dirty football kits on my bathroom floor, leave the sink full of dishes, come home drunk with his friends, or use my expensive shampoo as shower gel. Bear, however, does help digging up the flower beds, taking clothes out of my laundry, keeping the postman in check, but he's full of boundless, naive joy, makes every day funnier, happier, and better. Who can say that of a husband?
Well, by the way, Marjorie, in February of this year, before we get to the calls at 877-301-8970, this is in a February poll, 45% of humans would rather cuddle on the couch with their four-legged friend than pursue a potential romance with a human being. And 1 in 3, that'd be 33%, are reckoning they're more compatible with their pooch than their partner. Let's start with Sally in Newburyport. You are first on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Sally, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call.
Our pleasure.
I have 2 dogs and no boyfriend. Ditch the boyfriend for the dog. And the one thing about my youngest dog, he's a lab, and I got him when my father was deep in cancer treatment for pancreatic cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's 84 years old. He has beaten the cancer, and he attributes it to one of my dogs.
Oh, my goodness.
How
Wow.
so?
Yeah.
Fill in the blanks. How
Yes,
so?
when he was-
What does he say?
Well, what he says is when he was, he got a Whipple surgery at Mass General, and when he woke up and saw me in the recovery room, he said, "I want to see Boomer. I want to see your dog."
Oh, God.
And so he feeds my dog 3 to 4 times a week now. He spends hundreds of dollars on treats for it, and it's brightens his day. And he said, that dog is what brought me back from cancer.
I love that
Can't
story.
beat that. That's
Sally,
a
we
great
have
one, Sally. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. I'm sorry, Marjorie doesn't like it when I repeat myself, but I'm going to repeat myself.
Okay.
One of the great moments in Marjorie Egan history when she was in a full-page photo on the front page of the Boston Herald. Who was with you in that picture?
My dog, Harry the Peanut.
Best dog from C to C.
Harry the
right?
Peanut, best dog from C to C.
And Marjorie, and we've also told this, Marjorie would never read, I barely knew Marjorie at the point, Marjorie would never read the comments on her story.
You've known me for about 10 years,
and
actually, at
whatever
that point.
It was. And at that point, I would only read the comments on her story. This was this beautiful, what was the name of the book that caused you to write this thing?
Oh, the movie. It was about Marley.
Marley and Me, or whatever
Marley
the hell it
and
was.
Me. Yeah.
Okay.
It was Peanut and Me.
Okay, so Marjorie
Okay.
writes this beautiful
Okay.
story about her relationship.
All
And
right.
it was a beautiful,
Beautiful story.
No, I'm not going to say what you think I'm
Yep.
going to say. About her dog and her. And the comments were vicious in ways that you cannot possibly. This is even pre-Trump.
They really hated
They were
me
wild.
at the Herald.
Heather and Mattapoisett, you are next or first or second or something on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi, Heather.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
First time caller, long time listener.
We love that. It was both those things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I have 2 separate things, which I'll make it quick.
You don't have to.
One, I've been a vet tech for many, many years, and many of those in emergency. And the bonds that I develop with my patients, and then consequently with the owners of these patients, and the stories that I hear when the patients are recovering or, heaven forbid, with their loss, and how it affects their owners is just really touching and can really affect their both physical and mental health, absolutely, and that they really are family members.
That's right.
Pets, despite being certainly animals that we have, domesticated into our homes, and we definitely have to treat them as such and not anthropomorphize them, but they are family members. And, my human son, talks about my dog and cats as his brothers and sisters.
I love that. I love
it. I have a going on 17-year-old mutt from Guam who we brought back with us. We were living there, and she has just been, a marvel and has really taught me a lot about myself and about life and mortality and just living the best that we can every day, and that to live in the moment really is, I think, what pets teach us.
That is a totally beautiful call, Heather.
Heather,
call us again.
Thank
That
you.
was great.
Thank you very much.
Can I read a few texts, Marjorie?
You got Jake from Gloucester?
No, you start with Jake from Gloucester. Go ahead.
Thought experiment, says Jake. Lock your spouse and your dog in your trunk for 5 minutes. When you open the trunk, who's glad to see you?
Okay, that's a great thought experiment. I hear these are two sides of the issue. Aaron in Auburn says, my better half is so devoted, caring, and attentive to my feelings, and I love him so much. My husband is fine too. And an anonymous texter says, the husband may leave the seat up, but he doesn't drink from the toilet bowl, which is another.
How about Karen from Braintree?
What's that, Karen?
My husband got home from a work trip last night, gave a quick hug and kiss to my daughter and me, and immediately went to cuddle with the cat for 10 minutes. Should I be offended? I think not. Cats are the best.
Yeah, we shouldn't just say dogs, by the way. That's true. A lot of people feel
there's
the
a whole
same
other
way.
thing about cats. But this is back to Bear. This is the one that Katie Glass wrote about, her chocolate lab.
Yep.
She said, with Bear, I didn't have to pretend to be into hiking or niche Japanese films like when her husband or boyfriend, my dog Bear, he just took me as I was. And listen to this, for the first 6 months of our relationship, I didn't even bother wearing makeup because Bear always thinks I'm beautiful.
I love that. By
How's
the way,
that?
I don't want to ruin the mood, but CNN is reporting that there are hearings now, and the Trump administration is refusing the judge's order in that mistaken deportation case. Again, a case where their own lawyer said that the man from Maryland was mistakenly deported. They're objecting to the judge's order that says they should work to bring him back.
Just as a quick aside, does anybody want a person who's not guilty of a crime to be thrown into a prison
Yes, there's some
in El
people
Salvador
who do, apparently. There are.
For who knows how long,
Yeah.
this hellhole prison?
Yeah.
Who wants that?
Well, I think the people who are... Thank
Exactly.
you. The people who are refusing the judge's order. By the way, Nancy Gertner, former judge, will join us on Monday. Obviously, that's one of the things we'll talk about. Let's go to South Boston, where Scott is on the phone. Scott, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, love talking to you guys.
Thank you.
I wanted to share a story of another life-saving dog, though of a different nature.
Please.
Papa the dog, he's a little monster, terrible manners, but he was ripping around my friend's apartment, and he jumped on his lap and hit his crotch, stomped on his crotch, and my poor friend doubled over in pain, and he's on the floor, and he realizes, oh my God, that hurt so bad, like so bad. And he went to the doctor. It turns out he had testicular cancer. And I'm not confident that he would have found that without
Oh my gosh!
jumping on his crotch. And now he's in remission. He's recovering well. Shout out to Brad. Yeah, always respected dogs. They're lifesavers.
Wow.
Scott, I remember reading about how certain dogs can smell cancer in cells in human beings when they're growing.
Me too, yeah.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Scott, thank you very much for that one. The texter says, Jim, we just want to hear the pet story. Stop talking about Trump updates.
I know, that's what people think. 877-301-8970. And as a result, we're not going to talk about Kristi Noem, who obviously killed her dog, as
She
we know.
killed her dog. Wasn't
Head
it a
of Homeland
puppy?
Security. I don't know what it was.
Well, Mel from
We're not
Littleton
going to
says,
mention that, though.
my dog Bella is way more understanding when I'm yelling at this incompetent regime on the TV than my husband is. So there you go. She gets a lot of sympathy from Bella.
Speaking of this great call from this guy a minute ago about his friend's crotch.
Yep.
One of the other great moments in Best in Show is Fred Willard, who was a genius. This is maybe, I think I speak for Marty, this may be our favorite scene amongst 1,000 favorite scenes in one of the best movies ever made. Here he is, Fred Willard. Again, he's the dog show announcer, the TV announcer in Best in Show. Here he learns more about how the judges decide about the dogs. Here it is.
She is really giving him a thorough going over. Are all judges that thorough? I mean, she looks at the teeth.
It's very important that all the attributes are examined. Teeth, eyes, ears,
Ouch.
gums.
Am I seeing right? Where's she putting her hands now?
She's just checking out the dog's testicular area to make sure that everything is intact.
Hate to go out on a date with Judge Edie Franklin, have her judge me. That would be no fun.
Oh my God!
I think that's
if you
about
haven't
as funny
seen that
as it
movie,
gets.
it is hysterical.
Christopher Guest.
Christopher
genius,
Guest, yeah, it's just pine nuts,
macadamia nuts. Exactly. We can do the whole movie, and we won't, though, luckily for you. Nicole in West Roxbury, welcome to the show. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
So I have kind of opposite story what everybody else is expecting. So I had a...
Hey, Nicole, we're going to put you on hold for
we
1
can't
second.
hear you.
Because you're breaking up, but do not go away. We'll take one call. We'll put you on hold.
Go to a different place.
Then we'll come back and give you a second shot. So, Nicole, don't hang up. Let's go to Alita in New York. Hi, Alita. Welcome.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
By the way, one of the dogs in that movie was a Shih Tzu. I've had 9 of them over the years, all rescues. My husband was in an airplane crash in 1990.
Oh.
And I have to tell you, that my girls, one of my Shih Tzus was so stayed by me constantly.
Oh.
If I didn't have her, it would have been awful. He died 4 years ago. I don't mean this to be sad, but I'm telling you, saying the value of my pet. And my Shih Tzu Mei Lee was by me constantly while my husband died. So I have to tell you, there's nothing like them. They are marvelous. And by the way, have you seen the movie Hachiko with Richard Gere?
No, is it good?
Hachiko waited for his master year after year to come home on the train in Japan. And one day, the master died, and Hachiko kept standing there, sitting there. I forgot what, I think it was a husky or a shepherd, and sat there waiting for his master to come home. His master never came back on the train, constantly. Well, in Japan, they made a statue. They erected a statue of Hachiko.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, Alita, thank you for your call. And by the way,
Jim, we should mention Marianne Leone's book, Chris Cooper, about their rescue dogs. I forget the name of the book. What's the name of the book? It was a great book about how
Jamie's going to look it up. After their son Jesse died.
After they lost their son, that's right. They talked about how these dogs, we're going to get it for you in a second, because if you haven't read it, it is a really great book about grief
Before we
dogs.
Before we go back to Nicole, just to make Marjorie and me happy, we're going to play another soundbite. This has nothing to do with dogs, but it's brilliant. This is the great Jennifer Coolidge, a Massachusetts person, in Best in Show, sharing how much she was relatively young then, and she had a relationship with, let's say, a much older partner in the movie.
That's right.
And she's talking about what they
barely
have
alive.
Exactly, and don't have in common. Here's Coolidge.
Yeah, we both have so much in common. We both love soup, and we love the outdoors. We love snow peas, and talking and not talking. We could not talk or talk forever and still find things to not talk about.
Okay, she's in the movie. She's
brilliant.
in the movie, right?
Of course she's in the
falls
movie.
in love with the woman that's like the big dog. She takes care of that huge poodle. And by the way, the
He
name of the
looks
book,
like he was disinterred.
he
the
looks
husband,
like he's
the boyfriend,
125 years old.
right,
He can't even move or talk or open his mouth.
Whatever it is,
The
yeah.
book is called Five Dog Epiphany: How
Right.
a Quintet of Badass Bijons Retrieved Our Joy, by Marianne Leone
It's great.
and Chris Cooper. And it
really great.
is a great, terrific book about dogs and overcoming.
We're going to try Nicole one more time
Okay.
in West Roxbury. I hope it works better, Nicole. Welcome back.
Hey, can you hear me?
Much better. Great.
Awesome. Good. So, first of all, I'm a dog trainer.
Great.
I'm sure you can guess where I stand on this topic.
Yes.
So I have a family member who had dogs all her life. She had a dog with her boyfriend, and all of a sudden he decided he didn't like the dog anymore. So she gave the dog up for adoption, which I thought was insane. And she was such a great dog. I know.
Oh, no.
So I looked at my boyfriend when I found out about this. We've been together for a long time, love him very much. I said I would never do that. I said, if you decided that you didn't want our dog anymore, that would be the reason that I wouldn't want you anymore. So
We're so with
I
you,
think
Nicole.
that's horrible.
Horrible. I'm with you.
I mean, wasn't there a friend or a family member that could take the dog so she could still see the dog sometimes or something?
they tried. Actually, we had my mom actually tried, and it just didn't work out. So she just gave the dog up for adoption instead. So she's in a great family now. Probably somebody who loves her even more. And safe to say, I do not talk to this family member anymore.
Good for you, Nicole. That was
Boy.
great. I'm glad you stuck around. By the way, can we get the other side of that beautiful story about testicular cancer, the guy who called?
Yeah.
Eric from Hopedale says, my dog jumps on my crotch all the time, and I don't have cancer. So there you go. So there are two sides to that lovely story.
He says the dog is a jerk, Jim.
He did say it was a jerk. Let's
Yeah.
go to Ryan in Worcester. Welcome to the show, Ryan in Worcester. Hi.
Hi, all.
Hello.
First time, long time.
Love that.
Thank you. So currently I have 4.5 cats. I've got 4 cats and then an indoor-outdoor cat.
Okay. All right.
But I adopted my first cat in my 30s, and at the time, I did not know this, but I was descending into schizophrenia.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was just a hard time. right? And I adopted this little cat, and I'm hearing voices and all these things, all these terrible, awful things. And I bring this cat home, and I kind of recognize this now because I consider myself in remission, right? But this little cat sits in front of me, and she says, I'm here to protect you.
Oh, my goodness.
And, sorry, it's caught me.
It's okay.
It's just caught me. And from that time, right, obviously she does not mouth the words, right? But from that time, any time that she caught me responding to the voices or sort of acting in ways that were not good, she would just come and just insist to sit in my lap and just sit with me. And cool boy, that little cat helped me through so much, and I will never forget her.
By the way,
Ryan,
we are really,
that was a
really
great
glad
call.
you called. That was great. Ryan, thank you. Do you see the note from Marianne Leone, who I guess may be listening and just texted?
Yeah, she said, thank you for mentioning her
No,
terrific.
but keep going.
Hope to see you guys again this fall in my novel. Oh, Christina the Astonishing publishes on September 2nd, coming of age novel. Marianne Leone is a great writer, and she's told from the perspective of the irrepressible Christina, whose encounters with Catholic school nuns, Italian mothers, and small-town Massachusetts will have readers laughing out loud, even when Christina isn't. We absolutely will do that, Marianne, because Marianne's a great writer and a great friend.
By the way, in addition to that, speaking of a great friend of Marianne Leone's is now joining us. That would be Jared Bowen. Hello, Jared. How are you?
Jared.
It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
You don't have any pets. You don't have any food in your refrigerator. You have nothing, just vodka and nothing, right?
Vodka and tumbleweeds rolling through my house. That's all I have.
You ever had a pet? I don't even know. I know you lived on a farm kind of thing.
I grew up with a ton of animals, but my life is so busy I don't have time. That's what I desperately want, a horse and a dog. That's going to be the future.
Horse in your apartment?
Well, not in the apartment.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Although there would be plenty of space.
That's a very good line, actually. It's fairly funny.
You.
Okay, so what are you doing there on the show thing?
Well, we kind of have a special show today.
Oh.
We are upending our own show because there was big news last night when the Museum of Fine Arts announced its new director. So he is going to be joining us for the first 10 minutes of the show today. So this is his first public appearance.
He's an in-house guy, right?
He is. He's standing right behind you too right now.
Oh my goodness! Congratulations! Can't wait to hear you.
But yes, for the last year he's been at the museum, and it's a really lovely story that they had done an international search, and many people at the museum reached out to the search committee and said, you should take a look at our colleague here. And
so what do you have to kill for this guy?
What did I have to...
What was on the show that you decided wasn't important enough to continue with?
We're going to do it next week.
Okay,
I can't quite tell you. But then we're also going to look at the Minecraft movie, and I don't know if you've heard what's happening in theaters as this is unfolding. It's people are literally wild. Audiences are throwing things. It's just Rocky Horror Picture Show gone wild. And we'll talk more about the Trump tariffs and what this means for the entertainment industry.
Yeah, speaking of entertainment, a lot of people are saying Marjorie in black and white, me in color, sort of a Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Do you feel the same? Is that what struck you?
Well, I'm thinking that Marjorie is very, very dramatic. It's also sort of this cinematic effect that's happening.
I think so. I think I look very Edward R. Murrow-esque. What do you think?
I wouldn't say that. What did he say? Be safe. What did Chuck Todd say the other day? Be safe. What was his line?
Edward R. Murrow?
What did he say? What was his sign off?
I think you're talking about Walter Cronkite.
No, not good day.
Good night and good luck.
Good night and good luck. Did he say good night, good luck?
Thank
Is that
you,
what he
we
said?
don't have any
that's the
idea
name of the show.
Whoever he is.
Oh, that's right. George Clooney.
You're looking kind of Garbo-esque.
Hubba.
That's what I was going to say.
Garbo-esque, that's right.
By the way, someone just told us,
Garbo.
Max actually, one of your colleagues, said the culture show will be in sepia tone, which I think is quite beautiful. We'll be listening 2 minutes, 3 minutes, Jared Bowen and his colleagues. The Culture Show.
Okay, Jared, thank you very much, and have a great show, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jim. You did a very nice job. Very nice job.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to people that came down to the Boston Public Library. I'll be back there at the Boston Public Library to see you all, and we'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. You can keep up with us 24/7.
Whoa, Ken Burns will be here Tuesday when you make your return to the library.
That's right. Special event, Jim.
Yes, indeed.
We have a podcast. You can keep up with us 24/7 by looking for our podcast. We also have a TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Got some great stuff on that. Monday, we're going to be joined by our food policy analyst, Corby Kummer, retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. So many legal stories to talk about with this latest in this man wrongly sent to a prison in El Salvador. Boston Globe travel writer Christopher Muther will be with us. He went to Thailand, where White Lotus would say he's going to talk to us about that. Princeton's Khalil Gibran Mohammed. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Angelica Marrero, Matthew Glover, and Juan Jose Cadena.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Safety Insurance, offering a variety of home insurance products to cover your home's increased value. You can ask an independent agent about Safety Insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms. Brainiacs, assemble! It's time for another year of High School Quiz Show. So put your thinking caps on and get ready to play along at home. Don't miss a new episode of High School Quiz Show Saturday evening at 6 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. Coming up today, breaking news. Meet Pierre Turjanian, the next director of the Museum of Fine Arts. He joins us to talk about his vision for the MFA. From there, meet the baby zombie that rides a chicken.
Chicken jockey!
Chicken Jockey is just one of the myriad characters from the Minecraft universe populating a Minecraft movie, which is crushing box office expectations and sparking raucous audience reactions. Move over Hatfields and McCoys, Celtics versus Lakers, and that goes for Kendrick Lamar and Drake too. A decades-long feud between Madonna and Elton John, that no one seemed to know was happening, has finally ended, with Madonna posting on social media that they have finally buried the hatchet. Then the nation's playlist just got longer, with the National Recording Registry adding 25 new additions, from Helen Reddy to Brian Eno. That's right, Eno composed the Microsoft Windows reboot chime.
It was very funny when I got the job, because they sent me a quite long letter and it said the piece of music should be inspirational, sexy, driving, provocative, nostalgic. There were about 150 adjectives, and then at the bottom it said not more than 3.8 seconds long.
Plus, Nicki Minaj reaches GOAT status, topping the list of Billboard's best female rappers of all time. And reading the writing on the wall, bibliophiles are worried that President Trump's tariffs will mean pricier books.
What if I did have a book down my trousers?
Well, ideally, when I went back to the desk, you'd remove the Cadogan Guide to Bali from your trousers and either wipe it and put it back or buy it. I'll see you in a sec.
We take on all that and more right now on our Arts and Culture Week in Review.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Welcome to The Culture Show, live from the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Callie Crossley.
And I am James Bennett II.
We'll get to the week's culture news in a bit, but first, we're starting the show a little differently today with news last night that the Museum of Fine Arts has a new director. The 12th leader in the museum's 155-year history is Pierre Turjanian, a man chosen from within the MFA's own ranks. His near 30-year career has spanned overseeing the Arms and Armor collection at New York's Metropolitan Museum Museum of Art to specializing in European sculpture and decorative arts at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And for the last year, the French native led curatorial affairs and conservations at the MFA. He starts his new role on July 1st, but he joins us right now for his first public appearance as the newly appointed director, Pierre Turjanian. Congratulations and welcome to the Culture Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is such a prestigious institution. It's such a big job. What does it mean to take this job at this moment when people need art and arts are also under threat?
Well, first of all, it's a humbling experience. It's a big responsibility, but it's a great opportunity too. The MFA is 155 years old, and it has a great history of achievement, accomplishment. There's a lot more to do, and particularly at this time, I feel museums are more relevant than ever. We believe in cultural institutions and what they can do to make life better for everyone.
And how do you, is it precarious to take a role like this at this moment? How do you begin to carve out what the role of a museum should be, again, at this time where we're getting messages from the White House that certain content is appropriate, other content is not, where funding is under threat?
Well, it starts with thinking of what the role of an institution is. So, an institution provides stability in times of change, which is not to say institutions shouldn't and can't change. I'm very excited about thinking of an institution as an agent of change and something that is changing itself. At this particular time, it's perhaps more important than ever to reintroduce context, multiple voices, nuances, things that are universal, and draw from authentic experiences based on the collection. That's what art museums, I think, have to offer.
I know Callie is ready for questions too.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to pick up on the context because you won a prize for the kind of special context that you put your big exhibition into. And so I want to ask you, as you now take over the whole institution, how you make sure that that historical and cultural context is very much a part of each of the exhibitions at the museum.
Well, first, there has to be an encouragement for everybody to bring their own context, for visitors, for audiences to bring their own context to the story. And our recent exhibition on democracy, I think, was a good example where you could participate, engage with the exhibition. Context is also sometimes with juxtapositions, clever juxtaposition between old and new, things that seem one thing but actually mean the opposite. So we have 500,000 objects in the collection. I think we can draw from all of that and also from our approach to interpretation. We have a program called Table of Voices, and that's one way you bring the community to weigh in on how you respond to an experience with objects. I think all this mix is something we already have. There's a lot more we can do to continue to be very creative and to provide a context that sometimes will look like something that's happening today is familiar, and yet it is distinct.
Before James jumps in, I'll remind people we're speaking with Pierre Turjanian, who has just been named the next director of the Museum of Fine Arts, a role he'll begin this summer. James?
Yeah, I was talking to someone over at a different local arts institution, and I want to ask you this question, but I don't want to ask it built on any kind of prior assumption. But do you feel that typical museum goers today are more thirsty for contemporary art and stories than, let's say, things that might be found in an older collection? Do you think that a lot of typical museum goers find that to be the case for themselves personally?
Well, I think there are museums that focus on contemporary. There are museums that do not show contemporary, and yet they have audiences, and they're museum goers. It's a great opportunity for us to be both. Right, to have the historical art and the contemporary, and to think of how the contemporary is connecting or responding or breaking away with the historical. So yes, I think having a contemporary presence, and we're really looking forward to announcing opening of our contemporary, permanent display of contemporary art at the MFA, is a great opportunity to create additional engagement.
Right, and on the flip side of that too, it's like I wonder how you take that contemporary sensibility, right, and then connect that back, to things that are from the past. Do you have any ideas about how to do that?
Well, I think one good example, we recently had this exhibition, Hallyu, the Korean wave.
Yes, it was fabulous.
And you had all the contemporary, you see the K-pop today, you look at all the incredible modernization that happened in Korea since the Second World War. And on the other hand, we had the historical objects that from our own permanent collection that were interwoven with the modern creation, and you see the reverence within the contemporary sphere in Korea for their past as well. So yes, I think it's quite possible.
Excellent.
Let's take a moment for you to tell us a little bit about you. Did you grow up with art? How did this become a passion for you?
Well, my father was a Persian carpet dealer, and I worked for him during the summers rolling carpets and putting them on trucks. So to the degree that I grew up with art, I remember what wool smells like when the presence of antique carpets, but not really. It came late on as an interest. I didn't even know when I was in my early 20s you could have a career in the arts. And I never found anything as intriguing and rewarding as bringing a voice back to objects that have become silent and seeing how different individuals and communities see different things in the same object. So this was an excursion away from what I had trained for. I trained as a lawyer, and then I got a business degree, and it just hit on me that art was going to be my calling. And I've been very, very fortunate to come to the United States and be given a chance to enter that career, that profession, 27 years ago.
I think we should make clear that you've only been at the museum a year, and people other than the folks at the high up, but people that work with you, pushed your case to be the head of the museum, which is, I think, quite an honor.
Thank you. Well, you earn the trust and the respect in how you do things, how you behave, and the values of the MFA were so appealing to me. This museum, where all belong, is more of a journey than a destination. It's a way of being, and I felt such an incredible embrace and warm welcome when I came to Boston, when I moved, and certainly so within my professional community. So it's been nothing but a great, rewarding encounter, I say, yeah.
This question, it's a little bit personal.
Yeah,
sorry.
please. Good.
But, I would imagine in the art world, you're working so hard, to come to an appointment, such as this, right? Like it's a dream come true in a way, right? It's a dream job. And what I would like to know is, have you been able to really celebrate that for yourself? Because again, contextually, this appointment is coming at a time of, in some ways you could call it like anti-intellectualism, right? A fear, in a way of art. I imagine that an appointment like that comes with this additional weight and feeling of responsibility, but how do you balance those two things, right? Like being like, wow, I finally made it to the top, but also like, oh, now I made it to the top?
It was never my ambition to make it to the top. To me, it's not a story about winning or losing. It was never seen in my mind about a competition. It's been about asking how I could be of service. So I started as a specialist, an arms and armor curator, and I had these objects that certainly families and kids were really into them, and how could I make them relevant to a broader audience? And then I started overseeing a little operation, had colleagues, and how could I be the advocate for everything we're doing together? And over time, it's become more and more exciting and empowering to be able to represent a larger group of folks that are working together from completely different perspective. Conservators, curators, interpreters, And yes, there's perhaps additional weight, but I find great confidence in the energy, the intellect, the curiosity, and honestly the camaraderie of my colleagues. So there's an army behind me, right?
Well, I'll take the final question, which is people who listen to the show know this is my passion. How long before the MFA has free admission?
Yeah. The ambition is to create access, right? If we can make it free, that's the ultimate goal. At this point, it's more the question of what can we do within our existing resources to make sure that everyone is given an opportunity to come to the MFA. And that is going to be and continue to be a priority.
We will take access. We like that word. Pierre Turjanian, thank you so much for being here with us today. And again, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks, pleasure.
Pierre Turjanian is the next director of the Museum of Fine Arts, a role he'll begin on July 1st. Coming up, a Minecraft movie is a minefield of memes and misbehaving moviegoers. That and more is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund. proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Are you a cat person or a dog person? Well, whatever your preference, the new documentary Pets explores what our relationship with animals says about being human.
There's a side of people that come out when they're talking about their pets that's very revealing.
I'm Juana Summers. My conversation with actress and documentary filmmaker Bryce Dallas Howard on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Lyric Stage, presenting the world premiere of The Great Reveal. Emotions escalate and revelations are shared at a backyard gender reveal party that tests the love of a family. April 4th through April 27th. Tickets at lyricstage.com. And Turkish Airlines, flying to over 300 destinations worldwide, including Athens, Seoul, Mumbai, and more. A complete list of destinations and more information is available at turkishairlines.com. And Rockland Trust Bank, helping foster healthy relationships with money by providing education and resources to the community, one neighborhood at a time. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
If you're looking for a break from the nonstop headlines, check out the Joy Beat podcast. Every episode, we step back and celebrate the heartwarming stories and inspiring people in our communities. Find the Joy Beat wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes a Minecraft movie, a blockbuster that's causing mayhem in movie theaters. Audiences are literally going wild for a film Rolling Stone calls an expensively cheap 100% corporate mess. Judge for yourself in this clip from the trailer.
I am Steve. As a child, I yearned for the mines, but something always got in the way.
Go on! Get out of here!
But the call of the mines was too strong. I started digging and digging until I found a wonderland where anything you can imagine is possible. As long as what you imagine can be built out of blocks.
And then destroyed, apparently, because so this is what's happening if people haven't seen this online, that kids, mostly kids, although I'm sure there are a lot of adults mixed in here too, are going to the movie theater right now, and in huge numbers, because this has been a box office boon at a time when Hollywood really needs it. It made about $100 and something million just in its opening weekend. And what they're doing is finding moments in the film to yell and scream back. Okay, fine, we saw that with the Rocky Horror Picture Show, so we know this whole template. Although these kids are taking it even further, and they're screaming and they're throwing things and they're tearing up chairs, and this is all because they're so, I guess, invested in this game turned movie, and especially a thing called Chicken Jockey, which James...
Chicken Jockey!
Okay, here we go. I knew that was coming. James can explain this all for us in a bit because he saw it, but Callie, this is insane, it seems.
Well, you know, it's a good time, it sounds like, for a lot of people. I just want to point this out before James, who has seen the film, weighs in. Men made up 62% of the audience, 64% under the age of 25. So I think that's an interesting, yeah, so that's a lot of boys screaming chicken jockey in the theater at this point.
Chicken jockey!
So tell us why that would be happening, James.
I think it's the power of the Easter egg, you know, in a film. And as much as it's kind of shocking and maybe disheartening to see, you know, a cinema screen get quite literally trashed, to me there's also a weird kind of joy and ecstasy that I'm getting by proxy. Like, wow, y'all are actually really excited about something, you know, a piece of art in the real world. And just to give context, right, to the chicken jockey thing.
Chicken jockey!
Thank you.
We have to stop saying this. Already we have to stop saying it.
So to give context to that, I believe it's a reference, right, to an in-game, it's a 2011 video game, an in-game instance it's pretty rare that it happens. And so to see it kind of on screen, it kind of feeds, you know, into that that machine, right? Here's an inside joke that is for you, the moviegoer. And then, like, as far as disruption goes, again, do not trash the theater. People work there. People have to clean up after you. But
so you just went this afternoon. Did any of this happen in the screening you saw?
And was it good?
Okay, so I was there mere hours ago at the AMC right up the street, and there were maybe like 8 people in the theater at this 10:30 a.m. screening on the younger side. I would guess under 25.
Oh man!
And you know, at first I was like, am I getting annoyed by like all the chatter behind me? And I was like, I'm not. Like, this is not made for me. Like, Minecraft has been around for what, 15 years or so? This means something completely different to someone who came up with this game as a grade schooler. And so I kind of settled in and then took myself as a visitor. Now I'm on your turf now. This is how you want to interact with, you know, what you're saying. Great.
Okay, but wait a minute. So that was your more benign experience. But here's David Rose, co-owner of a New Jersey theater that barred unaccompanied minors from seeing the Minecraft movie, telling Good Morning America about their audience reactions.
The manager called us and said that the theater was in bad shape. He said, well, it's a terrible mess. There is lotion squirted all over the place, and there's a row of seats that have been pulled out of the floor.
So I think that in some circumstances, and this is what is being fueled on TikTok and other things, this has gone well beyond appreciation. This is just, we have an excuse to behave really, really badly, and now it's being amplified on social media.
You know what fixes that, though? What do you need?
Police, which is what they've called.
They have called the cops. But what would fix it is checking your phone. You can't make that video that you hope goes viral and maybe lands you a couple of bucks without the phone itself. I mean, I've been kicked out of the theater before, right? 2009, Obsessed, hilarious movie with Beyonce and Idris Elba. But, you know, there was a cap to kind of the antics that could go on. What you're seeing, I guess, with these theaters and bringing live chickens, you know, into the seat.
Oh, they missed that one.
No, I didn't say the second part of the phrase. It's a game of one-upsmanship, which, like, kids love to one-up each other. And so it's like, well, wait a second. You take away the vehicle that broadcasts what you're doing, then it becomes something as rowdy as, like, I don't know, maybe like a Wicked sing-along. In which case, I'm sure they want Wicked back in theaters. This was, you know, that was nothing compared to this.
Well, I'm not a video game person, so to your point, it's not my audience, but I appreciate people who are into it. And I would say of all of the video games turned movies, the only one that interested me was the Lara Croft ones, because Angelina Jolie, I thought that was more like a Marvel film. But what we're hearing from a lot of critics now is that these video games are now replacing the Marvel kind of superheroes, which would explain in the last years where we've seen such a going down on the Marvel films in terms of attendance and support. So maybe this is going to be the next thing where all of these kinds of films are going to replace it. And one other thing, Jack Black is in it. I love Jack Black.
Yeah.
So I would watch it when it comes to, you know, streaming.
Well, Jack Black and Jennifer Coolidge.
Well, that's true too.
And
yes.
Chicken Jockey.
Yeah. So that would oh God.
And I hate to be the get off my lawn, or in this case, get off my seat back guy if I reach that age where I'm having to say this. But I think this is, to your point, I think this is also movie theaters now recognizing, as they looked at all these other ways to bring people in the door, whether it be the popcorn buckets that we've talked about, or it be these marathon screenings, that I guess if you put up a bunch of plastic sheeting everywhere, maybe this is a new experience to have people have this immersive experience. But this is just bizarre to see what's happening, and the fact that police have had to be called.
But the bottom line is, it's a huge boost for Hollywood. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Elton John has opened his heart to Madonna, and apparently he has the lock and key, because after decades, a long feud has evaporated that not a lot of people seem to know about existed. This is this long-running beef between Elton John and Madonna, and the two have just patched things up, and this does not really bode well, I think, if you look back at the history of this feud, because it's a lot of Elton John behaving badly and saying unkind things. So here's what he said way back in 2004 when people are describing this feud started. He takes a shot at Madonna as he accepts the Classic Songwriter Award at the Q Awards in the UK in 2004.
Madonna, best live act. Off. Since when has lip syncing been live? Sorry about that, but I think everyone who lip syncs in public on stage when you pay like 75 quid to see them should be shot. Thank you very much. That's me off her Christmas card list, but do I give a toss? No. Thank you very much.
So then this continues for years, and then it was Madonna who just at Saturday Night Live, when he was there recently with Brandi Carlile, went backstage and buried the hatchet. She wasn't completely good over the years, but it was mostly him, I think.
Right, and then he said at that point, forgive me, but I got to go back to one of his criticisms, which I have to say is correct. He said she did the worst Bond movie theme in ever, and I said, I don't even remember it. So in case you want to go back and listen to it, it's the one with Halle Berry. It is god awful. And then just to make sure that you understand how god awful it is, then you should immediately play Billie Eilish's song to know what a really good song is, because it's horrible. So he was correct. That's a correct criticism.
I was talking about Die Another Day, right?
Yes, Die Another Day.
I was going to say, there's a reason we did not bump in on that.
So let's play a little bit of Die Another Day, which Callie and Elton John had such a problem with. You know what? Okay.
It's horrible. It's not aged well.
I have to tell you, it's on my running playlist, so I'm quite fond of it, actually, because I hear it almost on a daily basis.
Oh, my God.
Because my iPod Shuffle has not learned how to shuffle. Yes, I actually still run with an iPod Shuffle.
But you know that's not a Bond theme. That's a horrible song. It's okay by itself.
But I think it's in keeping with Madonna, who's I'm going to be her defender, because I don't want to end up on her bad side, and I still want to stay on the Christmas card list. But I think when we look at Madonna, she's always tried to reinvent and move things forward.
Yes, but that's not a Bond theme. I'm sorry. He's right. That was horrible.
I kind of agree with you, but not really.
It's a product. It's a product of that time, right? It came out in what, 2002, maybe, I think. A couple years before Daniel Craig made his entrance back, I think in 2006. And it's like, I'm sure once you've been in the industry for a long, long, long time, you have to understand, right, that like not everything you do is going to be gold, even if you are a celebrated and loved musician, right? Like, I'm sure Madonna has to know that not everything that she's done is going to be like.
She does know that, but you know, she said, and she is right about this. Don't be destroying other people's artistry out there just because. Yeah. So she's right about that, and that's why he apologized and asked.
And that's the one point where she became vulnerable because Lady Gaga is apparently the godmother to Elton John and his husband's 2 children. And at one point, Madonna said that essentially Lady Gaga was derivative, especially of Madonna's own work. She needed to be more original, and that prompted David Furnish, Elton John's husband, to go after her. Again, these are all things we're reading about. Nobody was really following this who had any idea. But so that was the one part where she stepped in. But it's also interesting to note that Elton John took a different look at her for her last tour when she did this AIDS memorial tribute, because of course Madonna is somebody who came up in the 1980s in New York and lost so many of her friends in that downtown New York club scene to the AIDS crisis. I think Elton John took a look at her and thought, you care deeply. It was a great signal that you did this, and maybe I'm being too unkind.
And we should mention that he's written a song that he wants the two of them to collaborate together on. So, you know.
Yeah, well, one thing I will say to kind of put a bow on this from at least my perspective is that I'm disappointed in my former neighbor. Fun fact, me and Madonna lived across the street from each other briefly in 2014. Different story. But, you know, we got nothing. We got no fun art out of this. No cool songs, no sweet digs, no diss tracks.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, and that's the thing, right? We talked so much about beefs in music for the past year because of Kendrick and Drake, obviously. But it's like, it seems like on even micro levels. Like, Louis Armstrong dropped a diss on Dizzy Gillespie back in like 1942. We couldn't get anything out of this. That would have been so much fun to listen to. So next time you find yourself in beef, Madonna, from me, please step it up. Give us something.
All right, well, speaking of Elton John, his 1973 song, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, is among the 25 selections added to the National Recording Registry this year. It also includes albums, a World Series broadcast, and the 1995 Microsoft Windows reboot chime by, who knew this?
I love this.
By composer Brian Eno.
Yeah.
So we love when this happens.
I love it.
First of all, I have to say I'm a little bit surprised that we still have a librarian of Congress. I thought for sure Carla Hayden was going to fall victim with everything that's coming out of Washington, but so far she is remaining there, and there is this wonderful program that has existed for almost 25 years now, where the public gets to vote. And by the way, you can vote on next year's submissions through October 1st. But this myriad group has been inducted this year, and we'll go do what we love to do and have our round robin of our favorite choices. Callie, what's yours?
Mine is the 2015 Broadway cast album of Hamilton, but my favorite of the favorite songs on that album is You'll Be Back, which is sung by Jonathan Groff brilliantly. And he is portraying King George III's comments to the former colonists in a very sweet threat. And it's just wonderful. It's one of the best pieces Lin-Manuel has ever done. And Lin-Manuel, by the way, who of course authored many of these songs, points out that this is the 10th anniversary of Hamilton. So, wow, it's
Shall we hear a little bit of that?
I love it.
It's
true.
By the way, Hamilton, what a testament to them, because you have to be out in the world for 10 years before you can be considered for submission. And of course, right away, people decided that Hamilton needs to go in.
This is actually the youngest release of all the stuff that went in this go around.
James, what's your pick among the 25?
Just want to say that Callie's enthusiastic response is a reason to be tuning into the stream on YouTube and not on 89.7 if you can do so. I love the national recording registry. I love the idea that there is an archive of sound that defines America, right? As we talk about like what is American, right? And what celebrates and uplifts us the right way. It's like, no, this is what we sound like. This is what is deemed important. There's so much great stuff. There's that certain 1970 Miles Davis album, Something Brew. There's the Cone concert from Keith Jarrett. There's that Harry Urata field recordings, the ethnomusicologist. But the thing that jumped out to me, to bring it right back up to the top, was the inclusion of Volume Alpha. That is the first Minecraft soundtrack. Oh. And to me, and this is only the second video game music that has been inducted into the National Recording Registry after, in 2023, the Super Mario Brothers theme song had made it in. And video game as an art form is really interesting how we talk about it, because it's like, when do you cross over from novelty, a game, something childish and frivolous, into a serious piece of art that has that cultural staying power. On top of that, too, you think about how the soundtrack is a collection of really, if you can say this, compelling ambient music. Ambient music post the 2010s, such an important way of listening for a lot of folks that are overworked, underpaid, sitting down on YouTube, typing in, looking for those lo-fi beats or whatever. It is just like, to me, it's like, wow, this is a moment.
Shall we take a listen?
Yeah, let's listen to some of this. Unlike Mario, this is an album. This is the entire recording, and it's a big recording. It's a huge deal, in my opinion, that this is included.
We love the diversity. As I mentioned, it was a World Series broadcast, too. There are field recordings done by journalists and internment camps, but the one I would like to go back to is something I think, when you hear the story behind it, it has even more resonance, but we'll just play mine before we talk about it.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
So I'm going to, of course, go with anything that has any suggestion of horses, but this was written in 1952 by Dale Evans, inspired by a chorus from one of her husband, Roy Rogers' songs the year before. And to do a deep dive into Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, of course, this became the theme song to their radio show, their television show. And this is a song about optimism and positivity. Yeah. And they had 9 children together. They had a very, very long marriage. They volunteered at orphanages and charities and children's hospitals. They made 29 movies, 200 albums. Wow. And this is a song that endures. And of course, it just lifts up your spirits. And now here's the coda to all of this. I never knew this part. Janis Joplin recorded a version of this as a birthday message for John Lennon right before she died, 3 days before she died. He received it and listened to it after she had died, and he was aware of her death. And I listened to it this morning. You can go on after the show, finish listening to the show, and then you can go on and listen. And of course, think of Janis Joplin singing this song, that raspy voice, and you can just hear her heart and optimism in it, despite what would happen 3 days later. So I just love to see that was included in this. And it wasn't even the oldest one. They had very early recordings from Hawaiian songs that people love.
I love it.
And then all the way up to Hamilton.
Yeah.
Well, very fun.
Mm-hmm.
Boy named Troy used to live in Detroit. Big money he was getting.
Well, we're listening to the greatest female rapper of all time. That's according to Billboard. Nicki Minaj tops their list. Here's a sampling of some of the other icons who are among the staff picks for the 25 greatest. Yeah, we have to stop playing.
No, I have to start.
The bottom, there ain't nowhere else to go but up. Bad days at work give you an attitude and you erupt. And take it out on me, but it's been 3 weeks since you were looking for your friend, the one you never hit and never called you again.
Straight, wait, I never beat, but my features and my shows 10 times your pay. 50K for a verse, no album out. Yeah, my money's so tall. Nah, I like dollars, I like diamonds, I like stunning, I like shining, I like $1 million deals. Platinum record this, Bible record that. I'm making so much money, I'm all over the net. I'm moving so fast, no time to process. And no, I'm not in a gang, but I'm always.
Well, in that montage, you just heard Salt and Peppa, Queen Latifah, Lauryn Hill, Missy Elliott, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, and Doechii. This is great because this is telling the story of women in hip-hop and rap who, of course, often been overlooked. And if I look at this list, you see people like Queen Latifah, who she came out of this world and then held it, and look at the career she has today. Salt and Peppa, of course, endure. The style came out of this. Whole ways of living came out of this. I thought this was brilliant that Billboard did this.
I agree, and it's so interesting looking at the rankings on the list because Doechii is 24, and Doechii just blew up at the Grammys and just won a big Billboard award. So to think about, there's enough talent in this list. She's also quite, young compared to some of the others, and the building of their careers, and how much now, I would argue, women are in the forefront of rap right now and getting the attention and doing the innovative kinds of musical tricks in their lyrics and in their performance. Because Doechii's performance at the Grammys was just as intense as the song. It was incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just to that point, anyone that's going to be like hating on Doechii, and there are many people that do. Yeah. It's like you can't just deny that it's some of the most compelling, music to listen to in the mainstream currently. But, I always feel conflicted about lists.
Yeah.
Even though this one was a different kind of conflict because there was nothing on this list that I felt bad about. Like sometimes you get these lists and it's like, these are the 100 best albums. You're like, what? Like, we talked about these before. But the thing about a list, right, the best 25 female rappers, the existence of this list, it implies that the presence of women in hip hop is a novelty. And I don't always know if that's the best way to tell the story of an art form. And just as a contrast, I would get it if it was like the 25 best white rappers or 25 best international rappers. And I'm sure you could flesh out a good list of both of those ways. But on the other hand, part of me is like, maybe the point of lists like this isn't to be a competitive ranking, right? I think lists like these are useful and important because if you can't name, if you're someone who's a self-professed, hip hop fan or fan of rappers and you can't name 10, female artists, that's a you problem. You need help. I'm serious. And a list
don't you see this as charting the DNA of rap? That's how I looked at it. I didn't see it as a novelty.
Yeah, there's a lot of historical context, speaking of context, in this list.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, right? I do see it both ways. One of the things that really stuck out to me, right? Nicki Minaj is number 1 on this list, but numbers 2 through 10, right? those are, acts that have been around for a minute. Nicki is the only one whose entire studio discography has existed from 2010, and beyond. And so, again, like to that point, that DNA point, if you are really in the dark as someone who wants to learn more about the history of this music that, you say you like, it's a great place to begin, right? To get your dose of history, of artistic context for the artist that informs, the Nicki Minaj's of today, the Doshis of today. Is Little Sims on this list? Maybe. I don't know. Possibly. So yeah, these lists can be functional and educational, and I think that's a really good way to look at it, at least from my perspective.
It's celebratory too. That's the way I looked at it.
Yes.
It was great.
I mean, I take your point to say only this, is that sometimes they can concretize in people's minds like this is it, and there's no others. And, I'm guilty of that too, because I'd go look at a list too. So I get that.
And it can concretize as well that, like, let's say this, you only belong on the top 25 female rappers. Like, I want to see Doechii top 10 all time eventually. I'll ride for that.
Okay.
I'm sure we will. Coming up, a new and costly chapter for the publishing industry. Book lovers are fretting about what President Trump's tariffs could mean for the price of books. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Passover is coming right up, the holiday celebrating the biblical exodus of Jews out of Egypt. Singing Dayenu will happen in Jewish communities all over the world, and for Jews in Iran, Passover is a chance for kids to hit each other with scallions. What that's all about next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Comcast, offering Xfinity Mobile, featuring data options that include streaming, browsing, and texting. Proud sponsor of GBH Music and Jazz Boston's International Jazz Day, April 30th at 7:15 at the GBH Studios. And Porter Square Books, hosting poet Martin Espada with his new collection of poems, Jailbreak of Sparrows, April 23rd at 7. Registration information at portersquarebooks.com. And the Newman School in the heart of Back Bay, dedicated to being a spirited community for local and global teachers and learners, now enrolling middle school day students and 5-day boarding high school students. NewmanBoston.org.
Hi, I'm Gal Zipperman-Lotan, bringing you GBH Daily, a newsletter to help you stay informed, not overwhelmed. You can subscribe today and get it in your inbox at gbh.org/daily. That's gbh.org/daily.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and James Bennett II. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes how President Trump's tariffs could influence the entertainment industry, from films to theme parks to books. I think a lot of the Hollywood stuff has been talked about, not as much as we can talk about it here. So let's start with books. And the one exception here, the one glimmer of hope as this trade war escalates, as it comes and goes, and of course China has just elevated what it's charging to 125%. As of the time we came on the air, it could have changed since then. But books are considered part of free speech and therefore would be exempt to tariffs, but not the paper.
Not the paper. And guess what? As much as 73% of the paper used for printing books in the U.S. comes from Canada, and they're not feeling us right now. So I just want to put that out there. Now, the Trump administration has exempted certain print books and children's picture books. So Bibles allegedly should be okay, and baby board books should be okay. But it's kind of confusing because at the same time, his executive order, references all the other kinds of paper. So here's what we can assume, that the costs are going to go up. And that it'll be it will be cost prohibitive for a lot of folks eventually, and that has to be passed on to us. I will just give a quote from Waterston's. They're in England, and people were concerned about, well, what does it mean if I'm trying to import some books from, out of the country? And so somebody wrote them and said, if I already pre-ordered about 2 months ago, do I have anything to worry about? Waterston's replied, I mean, there's plenty to worry about in the world, but your order will be fine. So, anyway.
Being concerned about books implies that we're still a society that reads. So I woke up and I saw that news and said, great, I am happy about that. It's funny you mention about the exemptions, in terms of books for these tariffs and how these are First Amendment protected. Children's books are exempt, Bibles are exempt. But I was talking to a friend who works in publishing, and I was like, what's going on, right? Like, what do you hear on your end, on the publishing side, maybe on the editing side? And what they hit me back with really gave me pause, because I didn't know this, but a lot of illustrated books are produced in China. Yeah. So where does the Chinese tariff also apply to, the books themselves? Are there exempt products also coming out of China? Is this a war on books and on children that read so they don't get any funny ideas? I'm not sure. I just thought it was a very interesting thing that I had never really thought about before, where those cardboard books, come from, where those illustrated books are produced.
Well, let's flip this now, and what goes to China, because this now moves to Hollywood, and Hollywood is trying to figure out what the tariff situation is going to mean for them. This is an industry already stumbling, coming out of the writers' strikes, coming out of COVID. People have disappeared for theaters unless they're tearing them up in the Minecraft movie. The Sundance sales of films were slow, box office is down, show orders are down, because what Hollywood is also recognizing is if we have an economic uncertainty, we don't know that we have a viable financial model going forward, so we have to slow down. But Hollywood has also loved making movies globally. We always hear about the domestic box office and the international box office. Well, so much of that comes from China. But China is now investing in Hollywood. It was interesting to hear the Museum of Fine Arts incoming director talk about Hallyu, which was their show that looked at the Korean wave, how South Korea recognized that pop culture could be an economic engine, and this is why we have K-pop, and this is why we have great films. They exported that into the world. China wants to own this for themselves, so this is another way of retaliating against the U.S., and this is going to hit studios hard.
And you know what? It's fascinating, because I am a person that reads the credits when the movies run, and I started noticing a couple of years ago when I was fully attending in the theater that a lot of the production costs and companies were Chinese. So it wasn't that, we were they were supporting the financial foundation so the film could be produced to begin with. So God knows, if you're starting there, then you put some more tariffs on the actors and the parts that they use and the equipment that they use to film it. Who can go to the movies?
Well, and to close the thought that I started there, China's also saying we may not take American movies at all.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, and which is really maybe not ironic, but it's almost as if, like, what are the costs that have already been incurred to make the American-produced movies screenable, in China, right? I feel that there's always some kind of story sometimes about how there's a different edit or a different cut of a major Hollywood production that has, a special version, for viewing in China, because that is such a huge profit, or I guess revenue kind of, source, like for those studios. So on one hand, artistically, what would it look like if it's like, well, we don't have to think about it anymore? But on the other hand, what would that do, again, industry-wise, to not be able to lean on that to recoup some of those costs, especially if we're not interested in watching it over here?
Well, Tom Cruise would look different. Did you see that anecdote?
Yeah. No.
That when they were making Top Gun, he wore a bomber jacket that had flags from Japan and Taiwan on his bomber jacket. When they thought that this film the new film Maverick was going to China, they had those
patches.
Whatever. Exactly the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
They had them removed. When it wasn't necessarily going to China, they put them back. I mean, that's how influential that market is, and that's how much they have to appease that market.
Wow.
You also have the studios saying, well, wait, if textiles are about to go up, and it's going to be more
Yes.
expensive to make costumes, and it's going to be more expensive to buy cameras because the chips are so expensive. It's already so inexpensive to make all of these films overseas because of the labor, because of the tax incentives that you find in Europe, which are even greater than what we have here. This isn't necessarily going to bring the industry back. That's what the studio chiefs are saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I'm thinking about how much production is done in Canada, or was. Now, they're not so happy with us either. So, I mean, there's a lot going on here that could impact.
Isn't it like a thing that like Toronto is
Yes.
kind of the stand-in for this generic every city for an American movie?
I went there actually.
Yes.
There's a whole district in Toronto where
that's
you can go in
right.
there. This Hallmark movie, Kelly, you would have loved it.
I
This
know,
Hallmark
I
movie was
know.
shot here, and this
Yeah.
was shot there.
Yeah. I actually remember there was a Hayden Christensen movie with Alyssa Milano called like Little Italy,
Yeah.
and it was just like you would look at it, it's like what Little Italy could this possibly be? Then it strikes you, oh, this is in Toronto. They're just like it's just the stand-in for just
Because I also saw this neighborhood in Holly's Mistletoe.
We're like, what?
They're right. Well, I don't know. Canada's mad at us, so we'll see.
Well, recently on the show, we also discussed President Trump's executive order targeting the Smithsonian, essentially calling out exhibitions and programming whose inclusive and diverse stories he feels are harmful, oppressive, and negative. Those were White House words to the nation's history and values. He also charged the vice president with remaking the Smithsonian's governing board. Now, news that Kevin Young, the director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, has stepped down. So this is exactly what we were anticipating last week. This happened last Friday. As we were talking about some of these elements on the air, this is a seismic shift. Now, we don't know exactly why Kevin Young stepped down, but obviously there is a lot of pressure, especially placed on this museum for its content.
And the whole content, by the way, has to do with exactly opposite of what the Trump executive order suggests it should not be. So I don't know how that works. It's about a history of Black Americans and all that entails, which of course entails everybody else in America because it's an American story. So what are you talking about? The only way to read it writ large is, are you saying shut it down? I mean, that's the only thing that can come in. And by the way, this was one of two museums cited specifically in the order. This was one. The other one was the Museum of Native Americans.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I can't, speculate on why, Kevin Young stepped down. I don't think any of us, really can. But it's
a huge loss.
It's huge. I love his work, love his poetry, I love the work that he's done, there and we talked before this over at Schaumburg as well. It was almost like a weird kind of matter of timey thing before this kind of came to the doorstep of the Blacksonian, right? I can't imagine there's anybody, in the at least current, administration with their view towards, arts and art programming that are a fan of that museum, because that museum's existence is, again, it's predicated on a history that's, sometimes often unpleasant. And that unpleasantness and unpalatableness is kind of a constant target. So, hard to see, not fun.
Well, we can bring this home too, and this is what we've also been talking about. If anybody didn't think that this is going to stay in Washington, where to some degree, because of federal funding, they can control content, which is, again, the history of our country that's being presented in these nations, it has come here. Because also this week we learned that the Museum of African American History here up on Beacon Hill and on Nantucket has just lost a sizable chunk of their funding, about $500,000 in federal funding, again, for the stories they're telling that the government is now saying are contrary to the values and the history of the United States. So this has begun washing through our communities as we look at a museum like this, which has been so revered, and it is going to have funding struggles going forward.
It's 16% of its budget, the amount that they'll lose. The current programming, according to its director, Dr. Noel Trent, will continue, but we don't know. And the current programming, by the way, some of it is specifically tied to the cities and the states' 250th anniversary celebration about the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. And so that's bringing another aspect to the story, which is very much American, as I've said. It'll be there, but after that, there's lots of struggles. And I can only surmise that the impact could be enough to, shut it down, which is not something we can afford to have happen to these institutions.
Yeah, as reported on our own GBH News this morning, I believe. Yeah, the fact that the order says that the museum, it's trying to rewrite history. That's what the order says. Those are its phrase, and it's like, just say you don't like black people or what we do. Make my life easier, because nothing's being rewritten. It's just being, written, I suppose. And so, yeah, again, hyper frustrating on that front.
Well, one person to follow is Lonnie Bunch, who's the head of the Smithsonian, who has issued a statement to their own staff, an email saying, we remain committed to what we do. So we'll see how long he can withstand that pressure. Right. Because again, the government doesn't control the Smithsonian. Right. It controls a lot of dollars, not all of the dollars, but a lot of dollars. So hopefully he can remain committed to that. Well, that means it's time for our lightning round. These are the stories that caught our attention this week. Callie, what's yours?
The LeBron James new Ken doll. I love it. It's officially the Barbie signature LeBron James Kenbassador doll. They've made a doll in LeBron James's image, and it looks just like him. It's fabulous. I would just enjoy it just as a piece of cultural interest. But in addition to that, Mattel is working with him and the LeBron James Family Foundation to support one of his many initiatives and this one about literacy. So they'll work with Save the Children to make sure that kids get books. And if you buy it between the 14th and the 19th, all of those sales go directly to that cause. I just love it. As we've seen and talked about on this show, sometimes these replicas look nothing like the people. Yeah. This looks great.
Is it bigger?
It's a doll. So it's taller than the normal dolls are because he's
a tall guy.
He's a tall guy, but it looks exactly like him, and I just think it's a wonderful way to support his charity, and it looks good.
With the trousers too.
He's got the whole thing.
It does look a lot like him. Clearly, he spent a lot of time, as I would if I was having a doll made. Get this right.
Because some of those others, not so good.
James, they look like the Trump portrait that everybody is taking down.
Yes.
The jowly Trump portrait.
And in that case, I don't blame Mr. Trump. That did not look like him. Okay.
James?
Just calling attention to the fact that Black Mirror is back for a 7th season, which is interesting to me because, we didn't have a lot of Black Mirror for a while. And part of it was people were talking. It's like, how do you make another season of an anthology of, near future dystopian tech stories? And they did. And I think it's funny because one of the episodes of this season, notably, is a sequel to USS Callister, which is, I think, one of the most lauded episodes of the entire anthology. And so it's interesting to me that they're dipping back into the bag of a previously unconnected episode. Because, again, anthology, it's not serialized. And it's like, one of these is going to be a sequel to what we've already done. Are we out of ideas because we're already living in the Mr. Beast and Elon Musk world? So...
Well, look forward to seeing that, or not.
Or not.
I started. Can't say that I regret it. I'm quite happy.
So mine is a celebration of theater because this week the Elliot Norton Award nominations came out. And for people who don't know, the Elliot Norton Awards are basically Boston's version of the Tonys. They're voted on and administered by the Boston Theater Critics Association, of which I am a member. And Joyce Kulhaywick, Culture Show contributor, is our president. It's terrifying having her be our leader. She's taskmaster, Joyce Kulhaywick. But no, it's a really wonderful celebration of theater. Our awards ceremony is happening on Monday, June 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Huntington Theater. And the great part is we've been telling this story of the Ufot family cycle, which is Mfiniso Udafia's August Wilson-esque cycle of one Nigerian family over many plays and many decades. And
for the next 2 years.
For the next 2 years, playing out at many theaters right here at the library, where a podcast presentation recently happened in partnership with GBH. And it's so fun to be connected with this because so many people around town are going from one to the next because they want to know what's happening to these characters. Well, it earned a whole slew of nominations because not only is it fun to talk about, but it's actually really excellent theater. And so it's been nice to see that honored. So again, our awards are June 2nd. It's always a really, really fun night.
I love that.
Yes. Well, that is all for this edition of The Culture Show. You can tune in Monday for writer David Gran, author of the best-selling books Killers of the Flower Moon and The Wager, plus the theater offering a tribute to David Lynch and the man behind a new translation of Homer's The Odyssey, not a modernization, but a restoration. What's coming up on Under the Radar this weekend?
We're taking a walk, the same walk that Paul Revere did to tell that story before the April 18th celebrations, with a lot of historical context that hasn't been shared before. And in the second half of the show, we're talking about the first presidential Seder, because it's Passover coming up this weekend.
And James, what are you working on?
Don't want to reveal too much. Let's just say I want you to keep an eye. You're on the radio towards the end of the week and up into Patriots Day for some cool archival tape about the Battle of Lexington, 1776.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know.
It's super cool. Thanks today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Pat Lely, and Olivia Corshio. Thanks to everyone who came down to be with us here at the library today. We love seeing you. Thank you for being part of the show with us. Thanks to the Lennox Hotel and the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Jared Bowen. Happy trails to you.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library.
The Culture
Spend your
Show is
afternoon
made possible
with us.
in part
Stay with
by a
us
generous
for
contribution
GBH's All
from
Things
the
Considered at 4 and Marketplace at 6:30. But first, the world. A global view of today's headlines from the World Newsroom. Right here on GBH 89.7.
Classical.org.